Chapter 808. Oh, then what can I do for you this time? The other party spoke in a methodical manner. As he returned to his seat and sat down, he sized up the person in front of him and thought about this person's information. Han family young master, this was this person's new ID in the parallel world. In the past, he was known as drunkard in the online gaming world. He was a top expert and usually chose a support-type priest as his class. He was the famous golden partner of the online gaming's #1 expert, Smoke Addict, later known as Sword Demon. Whether it was in duo combat, commanding, or tactical thinking, the two of them had great chemistry. However, other than Sword Demon, this person's other friends all had the same evaluation of him. Annoying, annoying, extremely annoying, as if they wanted this person to die 180 times. This golden partner disappeared after the online game entered the era of the parallel world. Then, they resurfaced in the guild and mercenary group war organized by the system. Along with them appeared the current parallel world. Chenli Drunk, who could be said to be the most ruthless and invincible assassin in the history of online gaming. Other than that, there was also the top expert of the sorcerer class, Yutian Shenming, who switched to the archer class, and Scathed in Battle, who was known as the #1 warrior, and Brother Yu, who wasn't that good at games but could flood the entire forum with comments. These ruthless characters actually formed a small mercenary group together. This was still a common topic in the game. Now, the newly established guild in Cloud City was very overpowered. It was with this group of people as the core. Other than that, it was said that there were many hidden experts. Although the guild was small, it was famous in the parallel world. However, winning the city battle and monopolizing the rewards was the biggest news recently. Being in the limelight would always attract jealousy and hatred. As a matter of fact, it was very overpowered and very quickly, it was attacked by the guilds in Cloud City. It was said that the situation was very bad now. Frankly speaking, the studio liked to see players fighting each other. This was the best time to sell consumable items. Customers used a lot of items and consumed them quickly. What was even more amazing was that due to the urgency of the situation, there wouldn't be much discussion about the price. As a matter of fact, it was extremely heaven-defying. This person stepped forward to purchase a large number of teleportation scrolls. This transaction was truly satisfying. Right now, he could only hope that they could fight for a while longer, but it seemed like the chances were not high. Only a few people managed to escape. This information was very reliable. It was his colleague in Cloud City, Ling Gufeng, who saw it with his own eyes. It was said that he was also at the scene of the siege and was almost mistakenly killed. This person thought a lot when he thought about it, because the person in front of him was a person with a lot of content. By this time, the Han family young master had already drunk half a cup of wine. He put the wine cup back on the table and made a slight sound of knocking. He suddenly came to his senses and realized that he had lost his composure. He felt very embarrassed and apologized profusely. As he had been too distracted, he had forgotten to look at the person in front of him. Only now did he start to size him up again. People who had never seen the Han family young master before would have such a reaction when they first saw him. At the same time, this person also confirmed a rumor in his heart. It was said that this golden pair of online gaming had a stunning appearance but an extremely terrible personality. As for the other, he was an admirable person but had an appearance that people didn't dare to compliment. Now it seemed that at least a quarter of the rumor had been confirmed. However, he couldn't stay silent anymore. This person knew that he had to speak. Although he had already said what he wanted to say, the other party didn't say anything. He could only say it again. Who asked him to be in the service industry? What do you need this time? This person changed the way he said it. The meaning was exactly the same as before. Nitrite radical, right? That name is very scientific. The Han family young master called out this person's name. They had previously contacted each other, so at least he knew this person's name. It's just a random name. Nitrite radical smiled. Then do your friends have sulfuric acid radical or hydrochloric acid radical? Asked the Han family young master. Hee. Nitrite radical smiled dryly. When the Han family young master asked him out, he said very seriously that he had something to discuss with him. But now, the Han family young master was talking about something irrelevant and didn't get to the point. Nitrite Radical didn't know how to reply. Luckily, the Han family young master didn't keep teasing him. He finished the remaining half glass of wine in his glass, put down the glass and said, "Then I'll be straightforward." Go ahead, go ahead." Nitrite Radical stood up and refilled the wine glass for the Han family young master as he said, "How big is your Yunting studio now?" asked the Han family young master. "What do you mean?" Nitrite Radical was stunned. He didn't understand the intention of the Han family young master's words. "Now, there's an opportunity for development in front of you," said the Han family young master. Nitrite Radical was very calm. It was too childish to get excited when he heard of opportunities and benefits. "From Ling Gufeng's introduction of you, your level seems to be higher than his, right?" said the Han family young master. He's in charge of specific matters. I'm in charge of more miscellaneous matters," Nitrite Radical said. The Han family young master smiled. At that time, the Han family young master needed a large number of teleportation scrolls. Ling Gufeng was actually the person in charge. If the sales volume was small, he could casually call for them. If the sales volume was large, he would need to gather them from many branches in the main cities. This would require the presence of a supervisor. Therefore, Ling Gufeng recommended this Nitrite Radical to the Han family young master. He said that Nitrite Radical could tell him if he needed anything. Nitrite Radical's status was obviously not low. At this time, his words were rather vague. He was in charge of more miscellaneous matters. It could be said that he was in charge of everything. Obviously, he was at the supervisor level. It was hard to tell if he was being humble or he was being cautious about the topic of the Han family young master. "I believe that Ling Gufeng has roughly told you about the ambush in Cloud City. However, there's a situation that I'm afraid Ling Gufeng didn't know," said the Han family young master. "Oh, what is it?" Nitrite Radical asked. "This ambush was instigated by a studio behind the scenes," said the Han family young master. "Oh, is that so?" Nitrite smiled without batting an eyelid. From his expression, it was impossible to tell whether he was interested in this matter or not. "The one behind this is Ying Chi Studio," said the Han family young master. "Currently the biggest studio in the industry." Nitrite Radical still replied casually. Obviously, before the Han family young master revealed his intentions or plans, Nitrite Radical didn't want to reveal his thoughts. "How big is the gap between Yun Teng and Ying Chi?" asked the Han family young master. "Quite big." It was still a casual and general answer. "Then have you seen the chaos in Moon Knight City with Ying Chi?" "I've heard of it. Isn't it good to take this opportunity to replace Ying Chi?" said the Han family young master. Nitrite looked at the young master of the Han family seriously for a while and suddenly smiled. "This sentence is a bit too much of a jump. If this is what you want to say when we meet, and it is deduced from the previous sentence based on causality, then it seems that there is no need for us to talk anymore." "Oh, but," said the Han family young master. Nitrite Radical was a bit hesitant. The person in front of him should be a smart and capable person, but if he was seriously thinking about this, then he was a bit of an idiot. But if he was faking it, then what was the point of faking it? Nitrite Radical couldn't figure it out, but in the end, he still spoke. Even if the person in front of him was an idiot, he was at least a big customer and a rich man. There was a need to build a friendship with this kind of person. Maybe you don't know much about the studio's operations. There are 100 main cities in the game. For a studio like Ying Chi, each city has a certain amount of power. Let's not talk about the current chaos. Even if Ying Chi's power in Moon Knight City was completely destroyed, it would only disrupt 1% of their business. They could easily recover with a bit of effort. That's why I said, this isn't a good opportunity to replace Ying Chi. Nitrite Radical was a bit more polite. In fact, this wasn't even a good opportunity, it wasn't even an opportunity. "Oh, so your brain is still working," said the Han family young master. "What do you mean?" Nitrite Radical was confused. "I thought you were asleep when I saw you mumbling something that didn't make any sense to me," the young master of the Han family said. At hashtag $% and confirmed half of it. Nitrite Radical thought, this guy's personality is really bad. Annoying, very annoying. Since everyone understands, let's get to the point, said the Han family young master. You guys have a chance to be promoted. Oh, let's hear it. Although Nitrite Radical was fooled, at least he knew that the Han family young master wasn't an idiot, so his attitude was very sincere. Cooperate with us, said the Han family young master. Please elaborate, said the Nitrite Radical. As a relatively new studio, although your Yuntang has a good reputation, you guys are more worried about your lack of popularity, right? Said the Han family young master. Nitrite Radical nodded. That's inevitable, we've already expected it. Cooperating with us will help you raise your popularity, said the Han family young master. Nitrite Radical was silent. This was the truth. All of them were famous experts. If they could use their names, it would indeed help raise their popularity. However, raising their popularity would at most make Yuntang's living conditions better and their development smoother. It was still too early to say that they would replace Ing Chi. If he used this as a condition for Yuntang to have a direct confrontation with Ing Chi, then Nitrite Radical would have to refuse even if he offended the rich man. This wasn't a fair price. It was just an image endorsement. It was a bit ridiculous to ask their small studio to wrestle with the industry's biggest Ing Chi. The Han family young master didn't say anything, waiting for Nitrite Radical to speak. Nitrite Radical thought for a moment, then said, I've admired your reputation in the gaming circle for a long time. If we can cooperate with you guys, it would be an honor for our studio. But even if it's like this, it's still far from replacing Ing Chi. We're not just famous. Han family young master said. I know that you guys are all top experts and have a lot of fighting strength. But forgive me for saying this, fighting strength isn't something that our studio needs. If an expert kills monsters for items, even if he kills them quickly, it wouldn't be faster than 100 noobs killing 100 monsters, right? Even if... That's not what I'm talking about. Han family young master interrupted Nitrite Radical. Then what is it? We have something else that you can't remember? Han family young master smiled. Something else? Nitrite Radical started to think. The thing that Han family young master was talking about would be a huge help to the studio's business. What could it be? Not long after, Nitrite Radical understood. He, who had always been calm, couldn't help but feel a bit excited. You're talking about the efficiency leveling method? That's right. Han family young master nodded. This. Nitrite Radical's brain started to work. The efficiency leveling method was different from the fame of an expert. It was a commodity that could be exchanged for profits in the market. More importantly, this was a product that was monopolized by the fist. Which studio wouldn't be jealous of Qianli's drunken team's efficiency leveling method? However, they couldn't find anyone who could come up with such a thing after interviewing all the experts in the game. Clothes, decorations, shipbuilding, food, these things could be done by hiring professionals from the real world. They could only do it in the game. But the efficiency leveling method, what kind of talent did they need? There were rumors that Qianli's drunken team was a professional fighting master. But what kind of profession was that? There was such a job in the real world? It wasn't that no studio had hired people from the real world. They had visited some martial arts schools. Most of the masters they hired didn't have any experience in games. It took a lot of effort just to understand their ideas and then put them into production. If they couldn't do it, the new masters would be level 0. How could they defeat level 40 or even level 50 monsters? When they reached level 40, the result was still unknown. It was said that some studios were hiring masters to train. But with the difficulty of leveling in the parallel world, how high would the players be when they reached level 40? Would they still need the efficiency leveling method? And what about the attitude of the game company? In such a long-term process, would they ignore the efficiency leveling method, which could speed up the player's leveling and shorten the game's lifespan? All these problems showed that the efficiency leveling method was a gold mine. If they really wanted to dig it, they could only rely on Qianli's drunken team now. As a result, some studios took action. 5 Knights looked for Qianli's drunken team to cooperate, but he was cut. Everyone in the circle had heard about this. Five Nights was very cunning. He knew that the cooperation could have been negotiated, but his calculations angered Qianli's drunken team and he would have to bear a lot of responsibility. Five Nights was afraid that other studios would cooperate with Qianli's drunken team and snatch away the sweetness. So he created rumors in the circle and described Qianli's drunken team as unreasonable. In short, whoever wanted to cooperate with them would be cut. The studios didn't even have time to think about it. The game currency was greatly adjusted, and the city wars and whatnot were all over the place. Putting aside the city wars, the currency adjustment had a huge impact on the studios. Almost all the studios suspended their business and waited for the unclear market situation to become clear. A huge business like the efficiency leveling method naturally had to be put aside for the time being. And now this person, who should be an important figure in the team, actually took the initiative to discuss the efficiency leveling method with him. It was impossible for Nitrite not to be excited. Although he was excited, this was a profitable business, but it didn't seem to have anything to do with replacing Ing Chi Studio. Nitrite was in a hurry, so he directly asked this question. The efficiency leveling method could let everyone earn a lot, but how would they replace Ing Chi Studio? Han Family Young Master laughed. The efficiency leveling method, if it were to be popularized, it would become a necessity for players. Do you agree? I agree. Nitrite nodded. You have something that all players need and will use, and they will constantly receive updates from you. You will have the largest customer base in the game. At this time, what business can you not compete with Ing Chi Studio? Han Family Young Master said. I know that, but it will take a long time, said the Nitrite radical. Han Family Young Master looked at him in surprise. Do you want to destroy Ing Chi in one night? If that's the case, you can't come to me, you have to talk to the game company. At the mention of the game company, Nitrite's heart skipped a beat. The game company probably won't approve of the efficiency leveling method. I'm afraid I can't keep doing this. Like I said, this is a product that needs to be updated at any time. Han Family Young Master said. What do you mean? Stupid, how can the game company stop the efficiency leveling method? This isn't a cheat program, it's a very healthy method that everyone likes to use. If he wants to stop it, does he have to ban the accounts of the players? If we do it all at once, millions of players will use it. Would he dare to ban it? He can't ban the accounts, he can't ban the program, he can only change his own program. At this time, we just have to follow the updates. Will this work? Nitrite Root, who was usually calm, was starting to feel guilty. This was going against the game company. No matter how powerful the studio was, could it be more powerful than this boss? He built the stage for you to earn money. Now that your studio is regulated, you have more concerns. Even if the game company pressured you, what can they do to you if you ignore it? This is a method that the players found out by themselves, without any outside help. He has no legal basis to punish you. Han Family Young Master thought it through. Think about it. Han Family Young Master grabbed a bottle of wine from the table and poured himself a drink, waiting for Nitrite's reply. This plan is long-term, but what about now? Don't you need us to help you deal with Ing Chi Studio? Nitrite asked. Chapter 809. Oh, what can you guys do now? I don't know much about the studio. Han Family Young Master smiled. But this smile and this tone made it hard to believe that he really didn't know. Does this guy want me to take the initiative to show my sincerity? Nitrous radical thought. The high-efficiency leveling method was a big cake that Mr. Han had given them. However, if they were to rely on this cake to rise to the top, then they would be able to compete with Ing Chi's studio in the future. For these people who were surrounded by tens of thousands of players right now, they obviously didn't want this kind of result that could only be seen in a few years. Right now, what could he do to help them? This was what the other party wanted in exchange for such a high profit. Nitrous Radical wanted to hear the other party's opinion, but Han Family Young Master wanted him to take the initiative to make some suggestions. He was probably trying to see what kind of bargaining chip we were willing to pay. But in this situation, what could a small studio like ours do to help them? It wasn't that Nitrous Radical didn't want to say it, But he couldn't think of anything they could do. He could only say with a bitter face, "We don't know what we can do." Han family young master smiled. "Actually, it's nothing. I just want to do some preparatory work for your upcoming development." "What do you mean?" Nitrous Radical didn't understand. There are hundreds of main cities in the game, and there are thousands of level 40 training areas. Don't you need a lot of manpower to fully promote this business? Can Yunting do that with its current scale? Han family young master said. "No, but we don't have to rush. We can do it bit by bit." Nitrous Radical suddenly stopped. He had realized that this was what the other party wanted in exchange for the efficiency leveling method. They wanted to popularize it on a large scale, but what did this have to do with the current situation? Nitrous Radical repeatedly recalled what Han family young master had said and finally found the key words: preparatory work, a lot of manpower. The Han family young master seemed to have noticed the nitrite radicals. He seized the opportunity to say, "I'm afraid it's not easy to find so many people who are familiar with the working procedures of the studio, right?" "You mean, you want us to poach people from Ying-Chi's studio?" Nitrite Radical suddenly felt a sense of helplessness. There was nothing more vicious than this move. Although Ying-Chi, who was famous and had connections, wouldn't fall just like that, it would definitely be a huge blow to their foundation. The studio industry was not mature enough. The talent market would not provide you with professional studio talents. It was easy to recruit temporary workers from the large group of gamers, but it was not easy to find people who truly understood the business operation of the studio, human resources, and finance. It was an industry that was gradually maturing, so there was definitely a lack of talent. Although the Han family young master's move was ruthless, Nitrite didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was easy to poach people from the studio. This industry was still in the stage of making money, and the people who came to the studio were all after money. For the time being, no one would say that they were interested in this industry and had the great dream of fighting for it for the rest of their lives. Therefore, as long as they offered better pay, most people would be happy to change jobs, even if Yunting was much younger than Ying-Chi. But the problem was that it was easy to make empty promises, but how was he going to fulfill them? Yunting's scale couldn't handle so many people from Ying-Chi. By that time, he would have to pay a month's salary, and it would close down in a few months due to lack of funds. Wasn't this idea too naive? What do you think? The young master of the Han family was currently holding the wine bottle firmly in his hand, pouring himself a drink while talking to Nitrite. Nitrite's wine glass, on the other hand, had not been touched for a long time and was busy working on his brain. Hearing Han family young master's words, Nitrite smiled bitterly. "This? I'm afraid we can't do this. I know we can rely on the promotion of the efficiency leveling method to absorb these people, but the risk is too great. The promotion and sales of the efficiency leveling method is still unknown. If we invest too much rashly, not only will the studio close down, but we might also be unable to fulfill so many labor contracts. We might even be sued." "Oh? You can come to this conclusion? It seems that you're already the leader of Yunting Studio?" Han family young master suddenly said. Nitrite was stunned, but he didn't hide anything, and told him the situation of their studio. "I'm not really the leader. Actually, this studio is a joint venture of me and 2 other friends. Everyone is in charge, so it's hard to say who is the boss. In this case, should we ask everyone to sit down and discuss and listen to their opinions? The 3 of us usually take turns to enter the game, but they're not here now. But this is indeed a big deal. I'll go and contact them." Although Nitrite felt that Han family young master's idea was a little naive, he didn't know why he was also tempted. The efficiency leveling method was like a huge business deal placed in front of him, and it would be a pity to give it up for no reason. Nitrite decided to discuss with his other 2 friends. It was too risky to poach Ying-Chi's people, but there might be some other good ideas that could persuade Ying-Chi to cooperate with them. "Okay, I'll wait for you." Han family young master had time, so he nodded in response, and Nitrite rushed out of the tavern. Not long after, Han family young master received a system notification that Nitrite had gone offline. Han family young master had finished a bottle of wine, But Nitrite didn't touch the glass of wine that he had poured for him. Han family young master ordered another bottle of wine, and drank it without any expression on his face. About 15 minutes later, the system notified Nitrite that he was online, and he immediately sent a message to Han family young master, saying that he would be there soon. After waiting for a while, Nitrite arrived alone. Looking at the Han family's young master's questioning gaze, he quickly explained, "The two of them aren't in Moonlit Night City, but they're already flying over. They'll be here soon. Should we continue our discussion here, or should we move to a quieter place?" "Let's do it here." Han family young master was too lazy to move. "Why don't we sit over there?" Nitrite pointed at an empty table in the corner. Han family young master nodded, and moved over with a bottle of wine. Nitrite was observant, and he noticed that Han family young master's bottle of wine was not the original one. Obviously, Han family young master had asked for it after he left. Nitrite thought to himself that Han family young master's ID was not randomly given, so he quickly asked for 2 more bottles. They moved to a corner, and after waiting for a while, the other 2 members of Yunting Studio arrived. They were a man and a woman, and they were as young as Nitrite. As for their professions, levels, and equipment, Han family young master didn't bother to pay attention to them. He only listened to Nitrite's introduction. "This is Yunting, and this is Wu." Han family young master didn't move, and he nodded as a greeting. This Yunting studio was named after his ID, so he was probably the one who invested the most among the 3, or the one who loved the studio the most. The 2 of them didn't pay much attention to the Han family's young master's impolite behavior. Nitrite Root had already reserved a seat for the 2 of them. Just as the 2 of them sat down, the Han family's young master said, "Is everything clear now?" The 3 nodded. Although they didn't say much on the phone, Nitrite's message was clear after they entered the game. The first to speak was the girl named Wu Yi. "I have a question I really want to ask. Why did you choose us to cooperate?" "You are the best choice," said Han family young master. "Why?" "First of all, Yunting is a new studio, but it has developed very quickly and smoothly. Apart from your good management, I think you should have more funds," said Han family young master. It's just SSL," Nitrite said. Han family young master smiled. "Secondly, the scale of your studio is just right. If it's too small, it won't be able to absorb Ingqi's manpower. If it's too big, for example, Sincerity, which is similar to Ingqi's, they won't even need to add manpower, and will be able to promote the efficiency leveling method to the entire game." "Why do you have to promote the efficiency leveling method to the entire game? Even if we do it slowly, we can still do well." The girl called Wu Yi spoke again. Han family young master smiled. He didn't expect her to ask such a question. He didn't know if she was stupid, or if Nitrite didn't explain it clearly to them. Before Han family young master could speak, Nitrite explained to her, "He doesn't want to promote the efficiency leveling method to the entire game, but he wants us to poach Ingqi's people. As for how the efficiency leveling method works, he doesn't care. The promotion is just an excuse for us to not poach people for nothing. Am I right?" "That's right." Han family young master smiled. "That's the gist of it. The people recruited by Ingqi will be enough to digest through the promotion of the efficiency leveling method. But after that, it will depend on your abilities as to how the rich people are going to be allocated. I think that's the most important thing to pay attention to. As for the efficiency leveling method, I really don't think there will be any risks in the process, unless..." "Unless what?" The 3 of them were nervous. "Unless the game company suddenly goes bankrupt, or the person who developed the efficiency leveling method dies, or something," Han family young master said. The 3 of them rolled their eyes. This kind of natural disaster was something that couldn't be avoided. Did it even need to be mentioned? "That's all I want to say. It all depends on the 3 of you. But I hope it can be done quickly. If it doesn't work, I'll have to contact the next studio as soon as possible. There are quite a few studios like yours." Han family young master nodded and didn't say anything else. The 3 of them didn't avoid Han family young master. They just put their heads together and whispered something. Han family young master looked at the 3 of them. Yunting seemed to be more excited. It seemed like he was more interested in this idea, Nitrite's expression was fluctuating. It was obvious that he was still talking with Han family young master. Although he was tempted, he had many concerns and couldn't make up his mind. As for Wu Yi, she was the one who talked with Han family young master, but now she didn't say anything. She stared at Yun Teng when Yun Teng was talking, she stared at Nitrite when Nitrite was talking, and peeked at Han family young master from time to time. Han family young master didn't avoid them, he just drank his wine and waited patiently for their results. Of course, he wouldn't be too anxious. There were many studios like Yun Teng, it was just that Yun Teng had been in contact with them since Ling Gufeng, and he had witnessed the situation where Ying Qi was besieged, so it was easier for him to cooperate with them. If it were other guilds who didn't know the truth, they would have to spend a lot of effort to explain why they wanted to play tricks with Ying Qi. Han family young master also knew that this was a difficult thing to do. It was not a good way to take advantage of the other guilds. It was up to the three of them to decide. The discussion lasted for half an hour, during which people from the 10 Guilds Alliance even went into the tavern to search, and found 2 people who were said to be miscellaneous people, making the tavern a mess. However, the 3 of them were immersed in the intense discussion. They didn't notice this episode at all. Half an hour later, the 3 of them finally stopped their discussion. Yun Teng was still excited, Nitrite was still a little hesitant, and Wu Ye's eyes were focused on Yun Teng. As expected, the one who spoke was Yun Teng. He nodded fiercely, then said 2 words with a determined tone, "Let's do it." Han family young master smiled, nodded, and raised his glass. "To our cooperation, cheers." Wait. Nitrite immediately said, "This isn't a simple matter, we have to sign a contract, you have to guarantee that you will cooperate with us." "Of course, but I'm not the one signing the contract. That guy is currently in Cloud City's prison, he can't get any information, you have to go there and find him." Han family young master said. "Who is it?" "100 Lives Classic, the guy who will provide you with the most efficient leveling method." Han family young master said. "Not Qianli Drunk?" The 3 were confused. "I'm afraid that Qianli Drunk won't be interested in this matter." Han family young master said. Although 100 Lives Classic was also a famous person, he still couldn't compare to Qianli Drunk. Moreover, when it came to the most efficient leveling method, Qianli Drunk's name was also the one who appeared the most. Now that the topic suddenly changed to 100 Lives Classic, the 3 couldn't help but have a trace of doubt. "You guys go to the prison over there, find him, and tell him about this matter," Han family young master said to himself. The 3's eyes widened. Could it be that he still doesn't know anything? "Nonsense, he's in prison, how can I contact him? I can't go in, there are thousands of people guarding there, they're here to kill us," Han family young master said. "So you're saying that the contract has nothing to do with you?" Nitrite said. "Of course, I won't develop any efficient leveling method," Han family young master said. "Fuck, do you know how much money is involved in your contract? Even the person involved doesn't know, and you're contacting us?" Han family young master nodded. "You don't need to discuss the details of the contract with me, you guys can go directly to the prison to find him." The 3 couldn't help but yell. "Is there any way to do this?" Han family young master spread his hands. "The conditions are limited. If he can come out, of course he'll be sitting here talking to you guys. That's not the problem. The problem is, you didn't even ask for his opinion, and directly came to find us on his behalf?" Nitrite had a face of disbelief. Han family young master was very impatient. "Didn't I already say? I can't go to prison, how can I ask?" "Offline. Can't you contact him offline?" "I'm not familiar with him, how can I contact him?" Han family young master said. "Not familiar?" The 3 coughed up blood again. Regarding the efficient leveling method, every studio had thought about it. Everyone knew how profitable it was. The contract with the partner, no matter if it was a profit sharing or a one-time buyout, the amount would at least be above 7 figures. The person in front of them didn't even know the person involved, and directly came over to discuss such a large contract. Was this person crazy? Don't waste time. Hurry up and go. Once the contract is signed, you guys can be at ease and start poaching people. Han family young master said. "Hey, let's go now." The 3 stood up and prepared to head to Cloud City. Han family young master nodded. Good luck. The three of them nodded, but they set off with their hearts full of doubts. Han family young master's various actions had already surprised them, but now they were surprised. Since this person couldn't even contact the person involved, how could he guarantee that they would do as he wanted? As long as they got the contract, they could go back on their word about poaching people. Although the three didn't have this kind of thought, they felt that it was very strange that Han family young master didn't seem to be on guard against this. They didn't know that as soon as they left, Han family young master immediately left the tavern and ran to the revival point. After going offline, he went to contact Brother Yu, who was also offline. Brother Yu didn't have much PK points. In order to maintain the same time as Sword Demon, they didn't have much PK points, so they didn't have to waste time in jail. Offline became a very heaven-defying way of contacting them in and out of jail. After many details were told to Brother Yu was also very surprised. He didn't even ask by Shijing and just bought the deal for him. Han family young master was too bold, wasn't he? Shouldn't you contact me first and then contact the studio? Brother Yu said. It's to save time. Alright, hurry up and talk to Bai Shijing in the game. Is he online? Han family young master was so unfamiliar with Bai Shijing that he didn't even add him as a friend. Yes, his PK points aren't low either, Brother Yu said. With Bai Shijing's skills, how could his PK points be low? He had good luck and bad luck. The good was that his PK points were around 19, not 20, so he didn't drop a level in jail. As for the bad, he was killed by Gu Fei by mistake. He, Depth of Water, and the others didn't have to go to jail at all. They weren't very heaven-defying people in the first place. Brother Yu ended the contact with Han family young master and re-entered the game. He and Bai Shijing happened to be in the same room, and their relationship was built on the efficient leveling method. It was a good topic to talk about. As soon as Brother Yu said this, Bai Shijing immediately became excited. That's great. This person? Brother Yu couldn't help but sigh. He had heard from Qianli that when he talked about this deal with Ying Qi, the person involved didn't say anything and was rejected by Qianli in a drunken rage. This time, the person involved didn't say anything and was settled by Han family young master. Was he a person or a commodity? Brother Yu couldn't help but think. Chapter 8:10. Nitrite, Yun Teng, and Wu Yi went to the mailbox to get the teleport scroll and arrived at Cloud City in the blink of an eye. They were the bosses of a gaming studio and were on a business trip to discuss such a big deal. They wouldn't be stingy with a scroll. Ling Gufeng was the one who sent the coordinates to the three bosses. He was a little suspicious when he learned that the three bosses were coming to Cloud City personally. He wondered if it had anything to do with the introduction of the Han family young master. Ling Gufeng returned to the coordinates after sending the scroll and waited for the three bosses. Soon the three arrived. Ling Gufeng asked for the purpose of their visit and learned that they were going to the prison. He was stunned for a moment but didn't ask any questions and led the way. This was the first time these three people had come to Cloud City. Outside the dungeon of Cloud City, the players led by Black Index Finger and Unchung Matsu were still guarding the place, but they all looked listless. There was no one among the tens of thousands of players who could still fight after being defeated by Qianli. Everyone was numbly executing the guild leader's arrangements, hoping that this matter would end soon. The dungeon wasn't a place where people didn't come. Using wanted missions to wash away PK points was a high-risk activity. Most players wouldn't choose that method. Those who were braver would do what they were supposed to do and wait for their PK points to disappear. Those who were less courageous would come to the dungeon and turn themselves in to get rid of their PK points. The players didn't know these four and didn't bother to pay attention to them. They let them come and go. The four of them passed through the crowd and arrived at the entrance of the dungeon. They paid the visitation fee and walked in. Do you know 100 Live Statesman? Nitrite asked Ling Gufeng. I should be able to recognize him. Ling Gufeng had seen 100 Live Statesmen when he attended a very overpowered campfire party. It was natural for him to take a few more glances at such a top character in the game. Ling Gufeng believed that he could still recognize him. The dungeon was bustling. In order to wash away his PK points, Gu Fei did piles of quests and the cells were packed one by one. The players in the prison were also numb. There was no need to understand the situation. Everyone here had been killed by Qianli when he was drunk. They were all wanted criminals. The more people there were, the livelier it would be. The players found their own entertainment. Some were chatting, some were playing cards, some were gambling, some were singing, and some were creating art. As the four of them walked down, they saw many players scribbling on the walls of the cells. They wrote slogans like, "Qianli will not die a natural death if he gets drunk." There were also some talented ones who drew mocking and sarcastic drawings. Ling Gufeng's scalp went numb. He didn't expect there to be so many people in the prison. It was a little difficult to recognize the unfamiliar encyclopedia of classics among so many people. The light in the prison was not very bright. Just as he was thinking of shouting at the top of his lungs, someone in the cell next to him suddenly shouted, "Gu Feng, Gu Feng." Ling Gufeng quickly turned his head and saw Brother Yu standing in the cell, stretching out his arm and shouting at him. "Brother Yu!" Ling Gufeng quickly went up, but before he could say his purpose, Brother Yu already spoke. "Are you looking for Baisher? He's here." Encyclopedia of Classics had been waiting beside Brother Yu for a long time. When he saw them, he also came up to greet them. Ling Gufeng quickly called the three bosses over and introduced them. "This is Encyclopedia of Classics. It's an honor to meet you." The three bosses quickly greeted him. Although they were only separated by a fence, contact was forbidden in the dungeon, so there was no need to shake hands. Both sides sat on the ground outside of the cell and were about to start negotiating. Brother Yu glanced back and saw another person crawl over. Brother Yu introduced him to them, Shui Bian. "It's an honor to meet you." The three said the same thing again, but it was the truth. They were all famous people. Can I ask, this efficient leveling method, just who mastered it?" Nitrite Radical asked. "Baisher, didn't the Han family young master tell you?" Brother Yu said. Then you are." The three were confused. They were looking for Baisher, but Encyclopedia of Classics was curled up and inconspicuous. Brother Yu and Shui Bian, on the other hand, casually sat in front of them. "I'm Baisher's manager." Brother Yu said. "I'm Baisher's assistant," Shui Bian said. The three looked at Encyclopedia of Classics in confusion, and Encyclopedia of Classics quickly said, "I'm Encyclopedia of Classics." "Ahem." Brother Yu coughed. "Don't waste time, let's start now." Those who had dealt with Encyclopedia of Classics knew that he wasn't good at this, so Brother Yu, who was familiar with all kinds of tricks in the game, and Shui Bian, who was familiar with the studio, volunteered to help Encyclopedia of Classics with this matter. Encyclopedia of Classics was naturally happy. Just like that, the negotiation began in a strange atmosphere under the puzzled gazes of many people. Outside the Cloud City, Gu Fei persevered and completed many quests. He didn't care if the quest targets were people from Black Alliance or Sheep Cloud Guild, as long as they weren't too close to the city. In the process, Unchung Mutsu and Black Index Finger sent out teams to try and track Gu Fei, but Gu Fei didn't hold back. If he could kill, he would, and if he couldn't, he would run. The map was vast, and he even led people into the level 60 leveling area, killing half of them. Now, no matter what Black Index Finger and Unchung Mutsu said, the players weren't willing to chase after Gu Fei. They couldn't catch him if there were too many of them, and if there were too few of them, they would just be sending themselves to their deaths. Black Index Finger and Unchung Mutsu saw the situation and simply ignored them. Qianli could do whatever he wanted when he was drunk. All the players with PK points returned to the city, and everyone took turns to guard the few areas in the city. The players who were training outside the city didn't wear their guild badges, so Qianli probably wouldn't recognize them if he was drunk. Gu Fei could tell from the coordinates on the mission list that the other party had set up. Some targets were moving towards the main city, but Gu Fei didn't care. He had completed a lot of quests, but he didn't hand them in, so his PK points were still accumulating. It was already at 468 points, which meant that another 100 players had died under Gu Fei's sword. As for how much PK points he had eliminated, Gu Fei kept adding and subtracting, but in the end, he was confused and just ignored it. Drifting, who had been sending names to Gu Fei, was already tired. He counted a few hundred PK points, and he sent a message to Gu Fei, "Boss, are you done? Your PK points are increasing and decreasing at the same time. When will this end? How many names have you sent me?" Gu Fei had an idea. Wasn't it easier to calculate here? Drifting's side was indeed convenient. He had the system's roster, and the number of people on each page was fixed. He could easily multiply it, and so he replied to Gu Fei, "More than 500. There are a lot of people with PK points in Cloud City." Gu Fei sighed. Things were really different now. From this, he could see that the number of players in the game was rapidly increasing. At the beginning of Cloud City, there weren't hundreds of people with PK points. "It's okay." Drifting was exhausted. "I think 500 is enough. I'll go turn in the quest and see," Gu Fei said. Although he had the function of the Windchaser emblem, who knew what Cloud City's wanted quest office looked like? Gu Fei didn't dare be careless. He didn't use the Windchaser emblem, but instead used a teleportation scroll and flew to Moonlit City's wanted quest office. Over at Moonlit City, Yun Zhongmu patted his chest and promised that he would ensure the safety of this place. If Gu Fei wanted to turn in the quest, he could come. Yun Zhongmu did what he said, and directly took over Moonlit City's wanted quest office. At this time, Gu Fei used the teleportation scroll and arrived at the quest office in the blink of an eye. He skillfully turned in the quest, and the system notifications rang out one after another. The rewards for each quest flew by. But in this row of notifications that flew by, Gu Fei keenly caught a strange word, but it flashed too quickly, and he couldn't see it clearly. When all the notifications stopped flashing, Gu Fei saw that his PK points had finally been cleared. This efficiency made Gu Fei a bit speechless. Thinking back to when he was running around doing wanted quests, completing hundreds of them definitely wouldn't have been a matter of a few hours. But now it was just that fast. If this was the case, then in the future, his experience from doing wanted quests would be even faster than killing monsters. But killing monsters might be a bit slow. Gu Fei shook his head as he thought. He understood the PK points of players as killing monsters. Then, Gu Fei began to search for the strange word he saw before in the hundreds of messages that flashed by. These words weren't just one line, and Gu Fei also knew what they were. This was a special reward. He had completed more than 500 wanted quests in one go, so many reward conditions must have been triggered. Gu Fei scrolled to the end of the message, and as expected, he quickly found the strange word. The first thing that appeared was, completed 400 wanted quests, Windchaser emblem's grade increased again. Gu Fei hurriedly flipped to the Windchaser emblem and was immediately overjoyed. Compared to the last time when it had been 100% appraised, the function this time was definitely 100 times more practical. Teleport. The new fourth function was still teleport, but it could teleport to a target. However, the system clearly stated that the teleport location was random, but it would at least be closer than the current location. In addition, each target could only be teleported once. That's awesome. Gu Fei punched the air. The Windchaser emblem was really a powerful weapon for wanted quests, but to be able to increase it to this level, the first 100 times, the second 200 times, and the third 400 times, it had already accumulated to 700 times. This was mostly due to Gu Fei's accumulation. Just today's quest alone had completed more than 500, and the first reward was the first to appear in the message. This meant that more of Gu Fei's achievements today could be converted into the next reward. Looking at the increasing number, the next reward might be 800 times. Now that he had the wanted license and the new target teleportation function, Gu Fei really wanted to immediately grind to 800 times to see what the next upgrade was. Suppressing his excitement, Gu Fei continued to flip to the next reward. Soon he saw it. Completed 200 wanted quests in a row, Windchaser boots grade increased. Would the shoes have a teleportation function? Gu Fei couldn't help but start fantasizing. He lifted his foot to take a look. The Windchaser boots grade had increased, but there wasn't an additional line of stats. Instead, the original stats had increased. The original plus 60 movement speed, which increased movement speed by 35%, had been updated to plus 80 movement speed, which increased movement speed by 40%. How much did it increase? Gu Fei was confused for a moment. He wasn't good at calculating, and compared to the Windchaser emblem, this reward didn't make Gu Fei too excited. This was where Gu Fei was different from other players. Any other person would definitely be more excited about this reward. The Windchaser emblem, other than for wanted quests, was at most an escape tool. There should be more. In Gu Fei's memory, there were more than these 2 lines. He continued to flip, and sure enough, he flipped to wanted player count, 600. However, because Gu Fei's wanted license had increased by 2 grades due to the City War reward, this reward, which was supposed to be an upgrade, was changed to experience and money. In Gu Fei's memory, there were only these 3 lines of rewards, but after thinking about it he felt that there should be one more. Windchaser's protection, this was also one of the rewards for wanted quests. The condition was to eliminate 400 PK points. This series of quests seemed to have doubled the conditions. The upgrade of Windchaser's protection was, of course, to eliminate 800 PK points. With his previous accumulation and today's craziness, Gu Fei felt that he should be able to reach 800 PK points. Just as he was feeling puzzled, he suddenly realized that Windchaser's protection didn't count in eliminating PK points. Although today's craziness was all about eliminating PK points, it didn't count there. It's not bad. Gu Fei was already very satisfied with the new function of the Windchaser emblem's upgrade. In addition, his PK points had all been eliminated, so he walked out of the wanted quest office with ease. Moonlit Night City was in chaos. The 10 Meetings Alliance attacked the 2 big guilds, and the 2 big guilds couldn't just sit there and not fight back. These 2 big guilds were the leaders of the resistance against the 10 Meetings Alliance in Moonlit Night City. At this time, when they raised their arms and called for help, many guilds followed. However, the 10 Meetings Alliance was still stronger. They weren't the guilds of the past. In Moonlit Night City, everyone wanted to beat them up. Cloud Twilight had also made many friendly guilds outside. At this time, one after another, they naturally stood on the side of the 10 Meetings Alliance. As soon as Gu Fei came out of the wanted quest office, there were 2 groups of people chasing and killing in front of him. When he looked again, there were battlefields everywhere in the city, and white light was everywhere. Gu Fei was excited. He quickly returned to the wanted quest office and checked the quests. It was great. There were many quests with PK points above 10. Gu Fei wanted to accept them, but he suddenly remembered that this wasn't the time to entertain himself. The group of people in Cloud City were still trapped in prison waiting for him to rescue them. Thinking about this, Gu Fei reluctantly left the wanted quest office and contacted the various parties in the prison. Finally done. At this time, Drifting saw Qianli, who had more than 400 PK points, disappear. He let out a long sigh of relief and laid on the ground with love left hand, handsome right hand. The players at the wanted quest office were also in an uproar when they saw the PK points rising. It was clearly rising and rising, so how did it suddenly disappear? What kind of method was this? Was there a bug? Players who didn't know about Gu Fei's reward would naturally have all kinds of speculations. Han Family Young Master was still sitting in the tavern, waiting for news from Nitrite and the others. They didn't come, but Gu Fei's message came first and asked him what the situation was. Situation? The others are in prison and we're outside. What's the situation? What evil plan do you have next? Gu Fei asked. I'm waiting for Cloud City's negotiation. It's been 2 hours and there's still no results. Han Family Young Master said. Negotiation? What negotiation? Gu Fei thought that the guilds were going to negotiate. Efficient leveling method. Find a cooperative studio and use it to teach Ying-Chi a lesson. Han Family Young Master said. What's going on? You'll know when the time comes. Han Family Young Master was too lazy to say. What is Moonlit Night City doing? Gu Fei felt that there was a reason why Moonlit Night City was so busy killing. Sunset Cloud wants to fight with Ying-Chi's people and mess with their guilds. Then the guilds in the city started fighting each other. There's no point. Han Family Young Master said. What about Reincarnated Amethyst? Yu Zai and the others? And Lan Yi and the others? Gu Fei asked. I don't know. Can't you just ask them? Han family young master was impatient. So Gu Fei asked the girls first. Many of the girls hadn't been to Moonlit Night City before. They originally wanted to walk around, but they didn't think that there would be smoke everywhere. It seemed like everyone was PK. So the girls continued their tour and headed towards the next city. Of course, they knew the situation Gu Fei and his group were in, but they knew that their existence was a weakness. It was better to stay as far away from them as possible. In the end, only Slender Waist Dan stayed behind, full of killing intent. Now, she was slaughtering with Cloud Twilight. However, the people they killed were all people they didn't know, so it was quite boring. As soon as they received Gu Fei's message, they immediately became excited and wanted to go back to Cloud City with Gu Fei to kill. As for Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and Lan Yi's group, Sunset Cloud didn't seem to be lacking in manpower. They were all holed up in the tavern like Han family young master. Gu Fei didn't have Lan Yi as a friend, but as soon as he and Tsubasa Sakuratsuka sent a message, Lan Yi also received it. "Fuck, what are you waiting for? Go back to Cloud City," Lan Yi yelled. "Okay, I'll go back and take a look. You guys go on your way," Gu Fei said. "Let's go together," Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. "I'll fly," Gu Fei said. Sakurazuka Tsukuzi cursed. He led a group of brothers and called Lan Yi over in a bad mood. They set off again towards Cloud Peak City. On the way, they bumped into Sunset Cloud. Although he hated Lan Yi and didn't have a good impression of the perverted men, he still asked where they were going. When he found out that they were going back to Cloud City, Sunset patted his chest. "You guys go first. I'll go back and help Brother Qianli after I've cleaned up the mess here." Gu Fei had been floating in the wilderness for a long time. When he returned to Cloud City, he felt quite emotional. He wandered around the streets and wanted to find a respawn point to see how his opponents were doing. Suddenly, he received a message. He opened it and saw that it was against the current. Hee, Brother Qianli can even clear his PK points so quickly. "You're flattering me," Gu Fei immediately replied humbly. "How's the situation? Do you need help?" "Against the current," said. Gu Fei paused and told the Han family young master about the situation. Han family young master laughed coldly. "The grass on the wall is finally starting to move? It looks like it's about time for us to counterattack." Against the current has already seen the situation. I think Sword Without Oath is about to do the same. Let them take the initiative to stick to us. That's what I'm waiting for. Do you really think you can kill them all by yourself? Han family young master said. That's hard to say. Gu Fei wasn't convinced. If you insist on killing them for a few days or weeks, then that's hard to say. But the guys in jail can't wait any longer. You've killed against the current in half a day and these old foxes are standing on our side. You've already succeeded. Han family young master said. Then what do we do? Work with them? Let's hear their conditions first. Set up a place and I'll be back. Han family young master said. Chapter 8:11. The meeting place wasn't in Cloud City, but in an open area outside of Cloud City. This was Han family young master's intention. He understood the importance of going against the current, so he didn't dare let his guard down against this shrewd guy. Gu Fei, on the other hand, didn't care at all. Even if he directly invited them to the guild headquarters, so what? If the other party dared to have evil intentions, then they would be digging their own graves. Gu Fei had absolute confidence, patience, and willpower. Even if he was ambushed and killed like a doll when he had hundreds of PK points, he would still resolutely level back up to complete his goal. Not being able to completely kill the opponent in the game reduced the psychological burden on the other party. But who wasn't? Wasn't Gu Fei also unable to be completely eliminated by them? Moreover, Gu Fei was such a powerful opponent. Even if his level dropped, as long as he focused all of his attention on leveling, his leveling speed wouldn't be something any other player could compare to. From this point of view, they were both immortal, but in reality, the one under more pressure was Gu Fei's opponent. Outside of Cloud City, the two first met up and waited for going against the current to arrive. Gu Fei then asked about the studio. Just as Han family young master said that it was about time, Nitrite Radical sent a message. The content was to thank Han Family Young Master for facilitating this deal. It's done. Han Family Young Master said to Gu Fei. Oh. Gu Fei didn't know anything about this matter from start to finish. Those guys from the studio went to the prison to negotiate with eccentric strategist. There's water depth and brother you there, so there shouldn't be a big problem. When Han Family Young Master said, there shouldn't be a big problem, he obviously meant that this time, the studio was really sincere and didn't have any schemes like Five Nights. When Gu Fei heard that Water Depth, a guy who disliked the studio no matter what, was keeping an eye on them, and that they were still able to negotiate, the other party's attitude and sincerity seemed to be really amazing. Even Water Depth couldn't find fault with it. This is all we can do for the studio. Our main focus is on the guilds in the game. Han Family Young Master said. Gu Fei nodded. He was indeed quite helpless against the studio. They were all businessmen, and they could not be deterred by force. At worst, they could just send people below level 10. No matter how strong Gu Fei was, what could he do? In fact, Ying Qi also wanted to do this in Moonlit Night City. However, when he heard that the 10 Societies Alliance was coming to cause trouble, he replaced them with characters below level 10 who were protected by the PK system. In the end, Yun Zhongmu was acting like a bandit. If he couldn't kill the boss, he would kill the client. Then he would throw trash into the shop and write graffiti on the walls. Ying Qi's people could do nothing but curse. In the end, they could only obediently suspend the shop. Right now, Wu Yi is going offline to prepare some things regarding the contract. We also need to start organizing the manpower. Nitrite sent a message to Han Family Young Master. He was quite a smart person, even though he couldn't figure out the relationship between these people. This Han Family Young Master and eccentric strategist weren't close at all, but he helped facilitate such a big deal. However, he didn't hear that he could take a single cent from it. What he wanted was for Yun Tung to take this opportunity to attack Ying Qi. This request wasn't even convenient to include in the contract, but during the negotiation, eccentric strategist and the other two people attached great importance to this promise. After nearly 3 hours of negotiation, both sides were struggling with how to fulfill this problem. When the problem was finally solved, both sides heaved a sigh of relief. As for the negotiation of profit distribution, which was supposed to be the most important part of the contract, it went very smoothly. The three bosses of the studio were clear that poaching Ying Qi's people was the only bargaining chip they could provide in this deal. When they talked about the studio's development, potential, and future, they acted as if they didn't hear anything. Therefore, as soon as the deal was finalized, Nitrite hurriedly expressed his position to Han Family Young Master. He really couldn't figure out who was the leader of this group of people, and he didn't know who he should express his goodwill to. The direct partner was eccentric strategist, but this guy seemed to have the least influence. During the negotiation, the guy named Shueishan seemed to be very familiar with the operation of the studio, but after talking with him in detail, this guy wasn't even a heaven-defying person. As soon as the Han Family Young Master was mentioned, he looked like he wanted to eat people up. The three bosses were really at a loss, extremely at a loss. Having been in the game business for so long, they had never seen a group of people with such strange and complicated relationships. As for Yunting Studio, they didn't care whether Ying Qi was Ying Qi or not. What they had to do was fulfill the conditions that they had discussed with the partner. The studio was a parasitic industry in the game. In the game, killing and robbing people were not against the law, and there were always despicable and dark means of competition. In comparison, it was a righteous thing to ask someone to jump ship with a tempting offer, although it was a little cruel to poach a lot of people in one go. How are you going to deal with the problem of personnel? Han Family Young Master asked casually. Oh, what do you think? Nitrite seemed to be answering casually. In my opinion, first, we have to be fast, and second, we have to be accurate. Fast is to avoid the counterattack, and accurate is to minimize the leakage of information. To achieve these 2 points, we have to prepare information. We need to poach the target's position in Ying Qi, treatment, personality, and interpersonal relationships. From the top to the bottom, the more important the person is, the more we have to poach, Han Family Young Master replied. Nitrite took a deep breath and replied, Brother, Are you interested in working in the studio? Han family young master smiled when he received the message. I don't think I'll work for someone else. Then I hope you'll never come again, said nitrous acid. I hope so. The young master of the Han family replied. At this time, he and Gu Fei had already seen the figure going against the current, so after greeting the nitrite radical, they didn't say anything else. The two of you are really careful. It's so tiring to meet at such a far place. Against the current greeted Lu Zilong with a smile on his face. He was just spouting nonsense. He was tired in the game, but it was impossible for him to be tired after just a few steps. It was possible that he would be annoyed. The situation is pressing. Han family young master laughed. From the looks of it, the person who is being pressed is not here. Against the current also laughed. Gu Fei looked at the two of them and felt that it was really interesting. The young master of the Han family was familiar with going against the current, but if going against the current was as shrewd as he said, how could he not have a good understanding of the young master of the Han family? Of these two fellows, the young master of the Han family had been drinking and singing for so long, leaving at the crucial moment. Going against the current, he was now standing on top of the wall and observing for so long, only standing out when he saw that the direction of the wind was off. These things were quite awkward to mention, but the two of them acted as if they didn't know about it and didn't mention it at all. They chatted happily and amicably, and the two of them played the word hypocrisy to the extreme. The two of them were originally using each other, but they seemed to be righteous and courageous. During the conversation, Against the current strongly criticized Shepherd Cloud Guild and Black Alliance for their despicable behavior of secretly attacking people because they were greedy for the rewards. He also seemed to intentionally or unintentionally reveal some second-tier guilds behind the two guilds, and it was obvious that they were also involved in this ambush. In Against the Current's words, they were all shameless, had no character in the game, and should only be satisfied with having their accounts deleted. After that, Against the Current expressed that he couldn't stand the behavior of these people, and he had been actively organizing people for the past half a day, looking for the right opportunity. Now, the wind was finally blowing in the wrong direction. Oh no, the time was finally here. Against the Current expressed that he was willing to uphold justice and completely eradicate these scumbags of Cloud City, even if it meant sacrificing the entire guild for this. As for Han Family Young Master, he already knew that Against the Current had a righteous heart when they were drinking and singing. He had already predicted that when the wind was blowing in the wrong direction, oh no, when the time was right, Against the Current would definitely stand out at all costs and lead the righteous 1050 people of his guild to set a moral example for the players of Cloud City. Of course, with Han Family Young Master style, there was definitely a tone of mockery between the lines. However, Against the Current acted as if he couldn't hear it. He expressed humility towards Han Family Young Master's high praise and repeatedly emphasized that his help this time was really for the word justice, and he definitely wouldn't covet any benefits. Hearing this, young Master Han said that although Renegade wasn't a despicable person who was greedy for benefits, his noble actions of raising the banner of justice was very heaven-defying, and they couldn't help but repay him. Against the Current's expression was solemn, and he expressed that his righteous heart couldn't be measured by any benefits. At this time, many of the people who participated in this negotiation had already vomited. Gu Fei couldn't bear it anymore and finally opened his mouth. He criticized Han Family Young Master, saying that he had insulted the great Against the Current, and that it was very immoral for him to attempt to corrupt the Against the Current with benefits. Han Family Young Master listened very seriously, but before he could defend himself, Against the Current had already hurriedly explained on behalf of Han Family Young Master. In the end, he talked about the huge pressure of being the Against the Current leader. Although he didn't want anything, he had to answer to the other 1049 people of the guild. For this, Against the Current was willing to sacrifice some of his personal image. So Han Family Young Master's expression was solemn, as if moved by Against the Current's words. He told Gu Fei that since the Against the Current leader had completely abandoned his personal image for the guild, then they had to fulfill his wish. Gu Fei could only sigh, as if he was so moved by the spirit of going against the current that he could not speak. At this time, Han family young master and Against the Current discussed the problem of how to repay the Against the Current. Against the Current swept away his previous noble attitude and put on the appearance of a merchant. He began to fight with the Han family young master for every inch of land. Every time he opened his mouth to ask for something, he would frown and say that it was for the sake of the 1049 people of the guild. The people that Against the Current brought with him had already hidden far away to kill monsters to kill time. They were afraid that if they continued to listen, they would have the urge to leave the guild. Gu Fei continued to listen on the side with his sword in hand. After half an hour, the two finally came to an end. Han family young master agreed to give Against the Current the premium VIP treatment in the city where the guild resided. Against the Current finally accepted this condition with great difficulty. However, he was also worried that the Against the Current leader was still in jail and couldn't appear for the time being. In response, Han family young master only said indifferently, "The leader is Sword Demon." Against the Current actually shut up just like that. It was really Sword Demon's character that was deeply rooted in people's hearts. As long as he really helped, how would Sword Demon be someone who would go back on his words? However, it was Han family young master and not Sword Demon who talked about a bunch of conditions with him. After a moment of silence, Against the Current finally said that Sword Demon was in jail and that it was extremely necessary for him to go in and visit him. Gu Fei couldn't help but laugh at the side. Compared to Sword Demon, Han family young master's character was really terrible. After talking for a long time, he still didn't believe him. He would rather go to jail to see Sword Demon and nod his head. Han family young master didn't care about this. He smiled and said, "It's what I should do." Against the Current hurriedly brought his people to visit the prison. Gu Fei still couldn't help but remind him, "There are a lot of people at the entrance of the dungeon. Will there be trouble? If they dare." Against the Current was playing domineering again. After saying this sentence arrogantly, he left. Han family young master smiled and said to Gu Fei, "Those guys are already having a hard time dealing with you. If they still want to provoke Against the Current at this time, they must be crazy. If they are like you and expected that Against the Current is a fence-sitter, then they would have already fallen. Even if they didn't go crazy, they would still be crazy." Gu Fei said. Han family young master began to think again. Gu Fei seemed to have already felt that a despicable plan was brewing. At the entrance of the dungeon, Against the Current only brought a few people over. He was also a famous person in Cloud City and knew a lot of people. Normally, no one would care about people coming in and out of the dungeon. The news of Against the Current quickly spread to the ears of Black Index Finger and Unchung Matsu. The two really understood Against the Current's character. Once they heard that he had arrived, their eyes showed hatred and worry. The current situation was extremely unfavorable for them. As long as they used the tactic of delaying, they would definitely be the ones who would suffer a lot in the end. The people in the dungeon refused to go online no matter what. Assassins like Gu Fei were roaming outside. The group of players had to take turns to guard a few spots every day without stopping. The players who were training outside were also on tenterhooks. It had only been half a day, and they were already in such a state. If the people in the dungeon just took a break and slept at home for a week, wouldn't the tens of thousands of players collapse? This situation was clearly already happening. It wasn't like Unchung Matsu and the others couldn't enter the dungeon. They had already sent people in to take a look. There weren't many very overpowered people in the dungeon. Those who were also relaxed, playing cards and chatting. They didn't look like they were in a difficult situation at all. Unchung Matsu and Black Index Finger were about to go crazy, but if they didn't come out and go online, there was nothing they could do. Right now, the two of them even had the heart to die. Yet, the person who had gone against the current had come to bully them at this time. The two of them were unable to quell their anger. In their hearts, they thought that if they could not deal with Thousand Miles Drunk, they would fight it out with this brat today. The two found the same thought in each other's eyes, so they came out from the crowd and welcomed Against the Current. "So it's guild leader Against the Current. Why do you have the time to come here?" Cloud Central's Moody had been on bad terms with Against the Current for a long time. He didn't have a good impression of Against the Current in the first place. Now that he knew that Against the Current was here to take advantage of the situation, he really wanted to go up and kill him. Hee, I came to the dungeon to see a friend. Against the Current said. Oh, who is it? Unchungmatsu asked. I don't think I need to tell anyone about this, do I? Against the Current said. But you have to tell them today. If you don't even think about entering. Unchungmatsu said. Against the Current was startled. Unchungmatsu's tough tone surprised him. He looked at the black index finger next to him. It looked like it was going to pull out its sword at any moment. Against the Current realized that these people had been driven crazy by Qianli's drunkenness. At this time, he thought that they didn't dare to offend him, but who knew that they had already given up. Qianli's drunkenness made them angry, and they needed to find a place to vent their anger. Against the Current, there were more than 1,000 people here. Going against the flow wasn't like killing 1,000 people. Gu Fei didn't dare to be arrogant, so he went with the flow and said, Is that so? Then I won't enter. I'm leaving. Fuck, you really know how to fucking retreat. Unchungmatsu was desperate to vent his anger, so his words weren't polite. How he wished that Against the Current could continue to be arrogant. That way, with a slash of his sword, a bunch of people would rush up and trample on him. How satisfying would that be? But now, this guy actually gave in. Although he could still slash if he wanted, he couldn't vent his anger. Unchungmatsu and the others were desperate to find someone who could vent their anger. If this was any other day, Against the Current would definitely fight back if Unchungmatsu cursed him in front of them. But who asked him to be so shameless today? Running into a crowd of 1,000 people, Against the Current's rationality won over his hot-bloodedness. Although his face was ghastly pale, he still held it in. He didn't reply, and without turning his head, he called out to his subordinates, Let's go. Seeing them turn and leave, the black index finger said to Unchungmatsu, Let them go. Unchungmatsu was speechless. Since it's already like this, they'll definitely come looking for trouble. Just kill them. The black index finger said. Unchungmatsu remained silent and waved his hand. A flying arrow pierced Against the Current's back. Against the Current was shocked. They turned around and found that 1,000 attacks were coming at them. Fuck, you really dared to attack us. Against the Current was depressed. But what could he do? Being trapped in this crowd of people, even Gu Fei didn't know if he could survive. Against the Current and the others were directly ambushed, and all of them died in an instant. Chapter 8:12. Unchungmatsu and Black Index Finger had been fantasizing about how they would defend the Mage Academy after killing Qianli in a drunken stupor. The two of them wished they could set up an ambush with millions of soldiers. However, Gu Fei never had the chance to taste this feast, and Against the Current caught up. After reviving in the Mage Academy, Against the Current was seething with anger. He immediately called for people in the guild to take revenge, but just as he was about to step out of the Mage Academy, he suddenly froze. Unchungmatsu and the others had too many people to set up an ambush in the market. Just as Against the Current reached the entrance, he saw a group of malicious players staring at him. Upstream was startled and hurriedly stopped in his tracks. He could imagine why there were so many people guarding here, but why did he have to catch up to them? Against the Current couldn't be sure if Unchungmatsu and the others had really fallen out with him, or if it was just a moment of impulse. If they had really fallen out, they would definitely defend and not let him live. If it was just a moment of impulse, they should have calmed down by now, right? Even if he calmed down, Against the Current would definitely take revenge, but now, would these people attack him? Against the Current couldn't ask, let alone try. Now that he was trapped here, he had nowhere to vent his frustrations. Against the Current hadn't even done anything, and he had already died a level. Was there any justice in this world? Against the Current wasn't in a hurry to call for reinforcements. Instead, he sent a message to Gu Fei and the others. Although it wasn't voluntary, he had already come this far. Let's just treat it as a ruse. Against the Current felt that if he died for this, he should at least make Qianli drunk or something. In the end, he received a reply from Qianli drunk. See, didn't I say there would be trouble? And you said you were fine. Be careful next time. After receiving this reply, Against the Current received a system notification saying, "Your heart is abnormal." He was almost forcefully disconnected from the game before he finally calmed down. "Brother Qianli, I'm now trapped in the Mage Academy." Against the Current continued to try to gain sympathy. "Don't you have a teleportation scroll?" Gu Fei asked. "No." "Then you're finished. There must be a lot of people in the Mage Academy. They definitely won't be able to come out." Gu Fei said. After receiving this reply, Upstream could not help but feel agitated again. Due to the frequent occurrence of 2 heart abnormalities in such a short period of time, the system kicked him out of the game without hesitation. As a result, this forceful kick became the 3rd heavy blow to Countercurrent. Countercurrent, who would have been fine after a short rest, had no choice but to swallow a few quick-acting heart reliever pills to endure. After resting for a few minutes, he went against the flow and re-entered the game. He tried his best to think of happier things, such as being forcefully disconnected from the game by the system. Fortunately, he was in the resurrection point, so he should not suffer any losses from forcefully disconnecting. Thinking of going against the flow, he went online and checked again. As expected, there were no losses. "See, there's still hope in life," Countercurrent said to himself. The guild members were puzzled when their guild leader went offline after a few minutes. Wasn't he just telling everyone to gather and say that they were going to fight a tough battle? A bunch of people were confused when Countercurrent returned to the game. Everyone immediately came to ask him. How could Countercurrent say that he was so angry that he had a heart attack? He could only say that he was going to the toilet. In the end, the players in the guild hurriedly came to him with bad news. The players against Singing and Wine were ambushed in the leveling area. In the few minutes that Countercurrent had acted up, 37 people had already died. Among them, 2 teams of 21 people were directly wiped out. Countercurrent knew that Unchung Matsu and the others had really fallen out with them. They might as well make the first move and take the initiative to attack the Singing and Wine players. As Countercurrent panicked, the system's alarms sounded again. Since he had just acted up, the system did not dare to be careless and directly kicked him. Countercurrent, who was disconnected from the game, wanted to cry but had no tears. He hurriedly re-entered the game, but as soon as he entered, he was warned by the system with big words. "For your health, please adjust your state of mind and play moderately. Half of my heart attacks were caused by you guys." Countercurrent cursed in his heart, but he did not dare to be too agitated. Everyone in the guild was confused by the guild leader's actions. Countercurrent acted as if nothing had happened and calmly conducted his work. This also surprised everyone. Although the guild leader had always been very rational, being rational did not mean that he was not angry. Now that the guild was ambushed, how could he still be so calm? "As expected of the guild leader," someone said. "The more critical the situation, the calmer he is." Amidst the praises, Countercurrent quickly finished arranging the work. The first thing to do was to remove all the guild badges so that the other side would not be able to confirm their identities. Next, they had to quickly gather and return to the city to save themselves at the Mage Academy. The gathering had already been done a long time ago. At this time, the people from Singing to Wine were heading towards the main city from all directions. Countercurrent had no other choice, so he solemnly expressed to Gu Fei and the others that he was going to start serving justice. "Thank you." Gu Fei's indifferent tone almost caused Countercurrent to act up again. How he wished he could hear the other party's extremely moved voice, even if it was fake. Gu Fei and the Han family young master also walked towards the main city as if nothing had happened. On the way, they saw the people gathering to Singing to Wine. These 2 people were too familiar to Singing to Wine. They knew everyone, but neither side took the initiative to greet them. The people from Singing to Wine were obviously more anxious and quickly left the 2 behind. "Quite anxious," Han family young master said. "Of course, Countercurrent is trapped in the Mage Academy." Gu Fei said. "Unchung Matsu and the others will also take the initiative. There will be a fierce battle at the Mage Academy. They probably expect it too." Han family young master said. "Which side will win?" Gu Fei asked. "Singing to Wine," Han family young master said without hesitation. "You're that sure?" Gu Fei said. The inside of the city is different from the outside. It's controlled by the terrain, so the advantage of numbers won't be easily displayed. Although there is an empty square outside of the revival point, it's perfect for singing to wine. If I was Unchung Matsu and the others, I wouldn't be defending there. I would first leave a few people to lure singing to wine's main force over. Then, I would form an outer circle and surround them from multiple streets, displaying the advantage of numbers. But even so, singing to wine would have no problem breaking out of the encirclement. There is a difference in the quality of the players. Han Family Young Master said. Everything was as Han Family Young Master expected. Outside of the Mage Academy, both sides mobilized their main forces to engage in a fierce battle. In the end, singing to wine had the upper hand. Their magic circle was quite powerful in this small street area. A row of spells blasted out, and within 30 meters of the street, not a single blade of grass could grow. Unchung Matsu and the others had no way to deal with this kind of offensive. After both sides dropped a few dozen levels, they tested the waters. Unchung Matsu and the others didn't risk their lives and chose to retreat. Right now, there were many opinions in their alliance. Although they had the advantage in numbers, Unchung Matsu and Black Index Finger didn't dare to rely on numbers to fight with their lives on the line. Besides, Against the Current wasn't stupid enough to rely on the strength of his own guild. He had already started searching for allies, and the first one he found was Unsworn Sword. It wasn't hard to understand. Because they were all competitors, Against the Current had to drag Unsworn Sword along. Otherwise, if they were to kill 1,000 enemies at the cost of 800 of their own, then wouldn't Against the Current be able to take advantage of them? Unsworn Sword had always considered themselves to be the biggest guild in Cloud City, but now that everyone knew that Unchung Matsu and the others in Cloud City were going against them, Against the Current was surprisingly calm. Unsworn Sword, who had always been regarded as a brainless guild, was even more composed than Against the Current. This caused the players outside to wonder if Unsworn Sword had forgotten something. Unsworn Sword wasn't as good as Against the Current when it came to judging the situation. Their main advisor, Years of Reflection, was a little tactful, but he often made a fool out of himself when it came to strategy. They were also watching from the sidelines as if they were going against the current. However, going against the current was a little faster than them. They had determined that 8,000 Miles Drunk and the others had the upper hand and rushed over to express their goodwill. When it came to matters like this, it was easier for those who were in the lead to reap the benefits. By the time all the players in Cloud City stood on Qianli's side, Against the Current would no longer be able to obtain the promise of a VIP. Unsworn Sword's tempo was slower by half a beat, but he managed to see more of the situation. Going against the flow was a moment of foolishness. He didn't follow behind 1,000 Miles Drunk to help him and accidentally pushed himself to the front. Unsworn Sword, who was about to look for Gu Fei, hesitated when he saw Jiodonga and Moody Cloudmidst fighting. This was especially true after Against the Current contacted him. Unsworn Sword didn't have much intelligence, but he wouldn't lose to anyone when it came to petty tricks. Moreover, he had been a guild leader for a long time, so he had a keen intuition. When Against the Current contacted him, he immediately realized that his reaction was slow this time, but he was late to another opportunity. All the big guilds in Cloud City were fighting each other, while they were completely preserving their strength. Unsworn Sword had dreamed of this kind of scene before, but he didn't think that such a day would actually come. At this time, he couldn't care less about asking for some benefits from Gu Fei's side. He could only play Tai Chi with Against the Current, such as how could he interfere with the feud between their guilds? When Against the Current saw that Unsworn Sword was trying to reap the benefits, he was extremely annoyed. If it wasn't for the fact that the system was focusing on him, he would have already started cursing and swearing. Against the Current definitely wouldn't agree to Against the Current, even if it meant perishing together. With this thought in mind, Against the Current decided to go all out and directly look for Unchung Matsu's side to negotiate. Against the Current's meaning was very clear. Unsworn Sword wanted to take advantage of our fight, but this definitely wouldn't do. This despicable guy, even if he had to die first. Let's put this aside for now, and take this opportunity to kill Against the Current. Unchung Mutsu and the others had already realized that against the current side wouldn't have a good ending. Moreover, after Qinli's drunkenness, their guild's vitality was greatly damaged. What was even more terrifying was that Qinli had already offended him. Who knew when this person would calm down? If he continued to kill Muyun Xing and Black Alliance members, the two guilds would be disbanded sooner or later. Also, the group of tigers and wolves in the dungeon were probably also holding their breaths. Once they were all out, how many of them would be easy to deal with? With this thought in mind, Unchung Mutsu felt that their future was bleak. Against the Current actually asked him to help them destroy Against the Current. Unchung Mutsu really liked this suggestion. After all, they were already a group of people with no future. Before he died, it was not a bad idea to drag a few more people down with him, especially Unsworn Sword, who had long since disliked him. Both sides immediately came to a temporary truce and began to make arrangements. Poor Unsworn Sword was still in the dark. Reflection Years also thought that they had encountered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but little did they know that their decision would put them under a dangerous wall, which was about to collapse in the blink of an eye. The first wave of ambushes was carried out very secretly. Just like the first wave of ambushes against Singing with Wine, there was no news of it at all. Obviously, the untrustworthy players did not participate in this operation at all. This time, there were even more players participating in the attack Against the Current, and everyone was more patient. It did not matter if they were alone or in a party, killing mobs or doing quests, as long as they were from Against the Current, they could be targeted. The guild channel of Against the Current exploded in an instant. In the first wave of ambushes, 142 Against the Current were directly killed. This was a huge loss. The opponent's attack was obviously extremely crazy. Unsworn Sword, who had just received the news, was dumbfounded. He had wanted to watch the show from the sidelines, but who would have thought that he would suddenly become the #1 target? Picking up the badge, gathering people, and, naturally, Against the Current operated in the same manner. Therefore, for a moment, the tradition of the big guilds in Cloud City wearing their badge with pride disappeared. Everyone kept their badge in the deepest part of their pockets, and if they saw a player without a badge on the street, they would be terrified. Once the other party's identity was confirmed, they only had 3 choices: run, kill, or be killed. Below the big guilds, there would always be many friends in the guild. A few of the big brains were looking for helpers, and in this aspect, Unsworn Sword had a slight advantage. Among the colorful clouds, he could fight for the position of the 5th largest guild in Cloud City. At a time like this, Gu Xiaoshang would not be so disloyal as to not help him. Gu Xiaoshang happily joined the battle. Cloud City's guilds weren't idle at all. Those who were familiar with the big guilds had already brought their people to stand with them. Those who were watching from the sidelines and didn't want to participate were being lobbied round after round. The relationship between the various guilds was complicated, and the guild leaders who were being lobbied were confused. Previously, they thought that Singing with Wine was fighting against Shepherd Cloud, but suddenly, they were fighting Against the Current. Then these two guilds should be together, right? But there were people from both guilds coming over to lobby them, which made it seem like they were not together. The small and medium-sized guilds were confused, very confused. They wanted to wait and see, but this would lead them to the same tragic path that Unsworn Sword had taken before. Waiting and seeing, they would be shot. Although large guilds like Against the Current wouldn't be wary of these small guilds watching from the sidelines, these small and medium-sized guilds also had small and medium-sized guilds. They didn't compete with rank 6 guilds, but they had competitors from rank 4 and rank 3 guilds of the same level. Some of the guilds that had already participated in the war discovered that their enemies were actually watching from the sidelines. How could they allow this to happen? Thus, they learned from Against the Current spirit and directly dragged their enemies into this chaotic war between guilds that no one knew the reason for. The battle escalated rapidly, and it was even more chaotic than the moonlit night city. Inside and outside of the city, every inch of land had become a battlefield. Other than players who were protected by the PvP system and below, almost everyone was thrown into the battlefield. Although a large number of people didn't belong to any guilds, in this chaotic battle, Because the guild emblem had become a symbol, everyone took it off. Therefore, those who didn't belong to any guilds without the emblem were often mistakenly killed. So at this time, someone suggested that it was not a good idea to mess around, and that everyone should wear their guild badge at the same time so that they could kill clearly. In the end, there was really an idiot guild leader who thought that this was a brilliant idea and led everyone to wear their guild badge. As a result, they became the most obvious target wherever they went and were the first to be killed. Amidst the cursing, those who wore their guild badge all took off their guild badge. The person who suggested this became the public enemy, and everyone wanted to kill him. The entire Cloud City was filled with flames of war. Compared to Moonlit Night City, this had never happened in Cloud City before. All the resurrection points were filled with people, and all of them were revived. The area outside the resurrection point was also the main battlefield. Controlling the resurrection point was equivalent to controlling the opponent's combat power, and as a result, this position was taken by others, and it was a life-and-death battle. Chasing 1,000 miles drunk, dealing with overpowered, and so on, Moody and the others had long since forgotten about it. They only knew that they had no future, but now that all the players in the city were going to lose a lot of levels, they were very excited. They worked hard and charged towards destruction with the others. At this time, the Wanted Mission Office was no longer an important place. At this time, who had the time to clean up the PvP system? So when Gu Fei and Han Family Young Master strolled here, they saw that the previous tight security was no longer there. Gu Fei could not help but rush into the Wanted Mission Office, and when he came out, he said incoherently, "So many monsters." All the players with PvP value were treated as monsters by him. Han Family Young Master was also shocked. The development of the situation was beyond his expectations. When Gu Fei mentioned that Unchung Mutsu and the others were going crazy, Han Family Young Master had a vague feeling that there might be a show to watch. In the end, when he went against the flow, Han Family Young Master immediately told Gu Fei that a big show was about to start. But he did not expect that it would escalate to the level of a big show in such a short time. And the cause of all this trouble was very heaven-defying. At this time, they were all squatting in the dungeon, aloof from worldly affairs, and as safe as they could be. How many idiots would it take to escalate the situation to this level? Han Family Young Master lamented. Chapter 8:13. Inside and outside Cloud City, there were battlefields everywhere. It was a mess. As the battle progressed, the main battlefield started to shift towards the center of the city. With the 7 main revival points as the center, it was divided into 7 large battlefields. The players didn't wear badges, didn't know each other, and couldn't tell friend from foe. The complexity of the battle couldn't be described with words. Apart from familiar faces, almost no one could be trusted. When the two sides met, they would report each other's guild. Some reported the truth, some reported lies. The truth was unpredictable. Many players didn't even know why they died. Gu Fei resisted the urge to accept a bunch of quests and go on a killing spree. After leaving the Wanted Quest office with the Han Family Young Master, they headed towards the dungeon. At this time, whether it was the Shepherd Clouds Guild, the Black Alliance, or any of the smaller guilds, they all had opponents. They couldn't even take care of themselves. They really didn't have enough manpower to block the entrance of the dungeon. When Gu Fei and the Han Family Young Master came over, they only saw a few sparse players. For Gu Fei, they couldn't be considered a combat force at all. The other side obviously had no intention of fighting with Gu Fei. As soon as they saw the black-clothed and purple-wielding Qianli drunk, they screamed and ran away. The purpose of their existence was to send a message when Qianli drunk appeared. Therefore, the two of them didn't encounter any obstacles. They easily paid the money and went in to visit the prison. The dungeon was still as lively as before. Due to the lack of communication with the outside world, no one had the time to run to the dungeon to send a message to these people who couldn't do anything. Therefore, these people didn't know that Cloud City was currently in the flames of war. When Gu Fei and the Han Family Young Master came in, they were talking, singing, shouting, and playing with art. Everything was the same as before. The more Gu Fei walked, the darker his face became. The dungeon was dark. When Gu Fei came in, everyone glanced at him casually, but they couldn't quickly recognize that he was Qianli's drunk. Those fellows who used Qianli's drunk as an art were still entertained. Some used Qianli's drunkenness to make up crosstalk jokes, some filled in lyrics to ridicule him, and there were all kinds of insulting cartoons drawn on the wall, not to mention those who directly expressed their feelings in words. The Han family young master sighed in admiration all the way. Outside the dungeon, he listened to the story of two drunk Qianli eating shit in the mud pond, and inside the dungeon he listened to the song of a drunk Qianli with a small penis. It was extremely joyful. However, the paintings on the wall were dark and blocked, so he couldn't fully appreciate them. This made the Han family young master feel a little regretful. Can you walk faster? Gu Fei was annoyed. Don't worry. Hey, look over here. This painting is not bad. The Han family young master called out. I'm not looking. Gu Fei's face darkened, and he ignored the Han family young master. He quickened his pace and looked for Sword Demon and the others. Finally, he saw Brother Yu and the others in a certain dungeon. When everyone saw Gu Fei coming over, they were surprised and had a strange expression. They had been in the dungeon for a long time, and they knew what the players around them did for entertainment. For Gu Fei to be able to endure it all the way, his mental strength was quite good. There's no time. I have to go offline or else I'll be kicked out. Of course, Brother Yu wasn't good at killing people, so he didn't have much PK points left. He had been in the dungeon for a while, and then he came to help Baisher Jingluan discuss the deal. After that, he discussed the deal with Baisher Jingluan and the others. Now that a lot of time had passed, he was about to be released from the dungeon, so he quickly prepared to go offline. No need. Everyone can go out when it's time. Gu Fei said. Oh. Everyone was startled. You killed them all? Brother Yu asked with a trembling voice. I didn't just kill them all. The Han family young master's voice floated over. Everyone in the city is about to die. Everyone stared at Gu Fei in horror, thinking to themselves, what did this guy do? Did he drop an atomic bomb on Cloud City? It's a mess outside. Our original opponents can't care about us anymore. Everyone can take this opportunity to come out. Gu Fei said truthfully. That's great. The players in the dungeon cheered. Although they didn't know the truth, Qianli drunk and the Han family young master were right in front of them. Could they be tricking them to go out and get killed? Everyone was excited when they found out they didn't have to waste any more time. What about the others? Gu Fei asked. The other side. Some of them are online and offline. Brother Yu said. Gu Fei looked back and saw that the dungeon was also very heaven-defying. Jian Nanyu and the others were in this cell. He hurriedly went over to tell them the news, and naturally, there was another round of cheers. Then he went to the other cell to find the Sword Demon. The Sword Demon was still meditating in the corner. Gu Fei called him a few times before he heard. He turned his head and saw it was Gu Fei and the Han family young master. He was startled. When Gu Fei stood in front of the dungeon, the other players in the dungeon recognized him. There was a moment of silence. These people had followed the Unchung Mutsu black index finger to attack. They knew that the outside of the dungeon was an extremely important defense circle. But now, Qianli drunk had actually entered the dungeon. Could it be that he had killed all the players outside? Everyone's faces were filled with fear. They looked at Gu Fei and the Sword Demon standing at the door and talking. Everyone subconsciously hid far away, as if Gu Fei could kill them here. It's okay. The Sword Demon was startled. He didn't doubt Gu Fei's ability, but using force like this would take many days to make the other party feel deeply pressured. It hadn't even been a day and the other party had already compromised. Wasn't his willpower a bit too weak? But after the Han family young master came over, he explained the current situation in a few words. The Sword Demon then understood. He didn't think that this matter would bring the whole city into a whirlpool. The Sword Demon was also filled with emotion. Although there are no obstacles to leaving the dungeon now, I suggest that everyone stay in the dungeon for a while. The Han family young master said. Yes, the dungeon is the safest now. If we leave the dungeon, our guild's identity will be more sensitive than anyone else. Once the players realize it, we will become the target of public criticism. The sword demon nodded. It's okay. Once we leave the dungeon, we can go to other main cities to play. Gu Fei said, that depends on the individual. In short, we should try not to appear in Cloud City. The sword demon said that this matter didn't affect him much. He was still far from leaving the dungeon. Even if he wanted to leave now, he couldn't. Then let's leave it at that for now. Gu Fei nodded. Then he and the Han family young master explained the sword demon's meaning to the others. Everyone felt that the sword demon's words were very reasonable. Then I'll go offline first. Brother Yu went offline in a panic. The countdown to his release had begun. He wasn't in a hurry to level up or anything. Cloud City was so lively now. He was more eager to go to the forum to see the gossip. Therefore, when the white light came, Brother Yu was the first to escape. The sword demon only pointed out the idea. Whether to hide in the dungeon or go to the outer city was everyone's choice. Therefore, there were sounds of discussion in the dungeon. Some wanted to go to the outer city temporarily, but most wanted to find a companion to avoid loneliness. How's your business discussion going? Gu Fei asked the 100 Generations Jingluan. Very smooth. The 100 Generations Jingluan rubbed his hands excitedly. We can start when we get out. Gu Fei was puzzled. Yes, me, Jianan Yu, and the others. We agreed to do this together a long time ago. Now that there's a studio to cooperate with us, we're so lucky. The 100 Generations Jingluan actually talked about this with Jianan Yu and the others at the campfire party. The people from Child Elite Group weren't too enthusiastic about the business of leveling efficiency. The ones who really wanted to make a fortune were the 100 Generations Jingluan and the 7 professional players. Of course, they hit it off. In fact, at that time, everyone just expressed their intentions. There was no agreement. However, the 100 Generations Jingluan was loyal. Although the studio actually needed a talent like him, he still brought Jianan Yu and the others along. The contract they signed was not in the name of the 100 Generations Jingluan, but in the name of the Qianli's Drunk Studio. It could be seen as a cooperation between the two studios. Oh, that's not bad. Gu Fei was gratified. During the campfire party, Jianan Yu and the 7 others had come to discuss the serious problem of the future with him. Now that they finally had a satisfactory solution, he was also quite happy. He went to the other side to comfort Jianan Yu and the others. As expected, they were all smiles and asked him to bring the good news to Dao Xiangmu and Lin Sensen, who hadn't been sent to prison. All right, everyone continue to enjoy your time in prison. We'll be going first. After saying goodbye to everyone, Gu Fei left the dungeon with the Han family young master. Outside the dungeon, the two were greeted with the same frightened faces. Gu Fei didn't fight with them. He asked the Han family young master, what else can we do next? Someone from the guild will do it for us, and the studio will also have a studio to work hard. I think we can just sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor, said the Han family young master. How can we do that? Gu Fei said solemnly. There are many missions in the wanted mission office. We can't waste them. I won't see you out. The Han family young master waved his hand at Gu Fei. Gu Fei left immediately. It could be said that he couldn't wait any longer. But as he flew away, the Han clan's young master noticed that those people who had expressions of fear on their faces had all turned to look at the Han clan's young master with malicious expressions. I have to waste a scroll again. The Han family young master was quite helpless. Even a wise man would sometimes neglect some small problems in front of him. Those fellows had already surrounded him. Just as the young master of the Han family was about to open the scroll, he suddenly saw a black shadow sprinting back from the street. Along the way, the person flashed 6 meters forward, muttering, I forgot, as he slashed with his sword. They turned around in shock and saw that Gu Fei had already killed them all. He waved his hand at the Han family young master and said, Let's go. This guy. The Han family young master put the scroll back into his pocket. In the information room of the town building in Cloud City, Drifting and Right Love Left Hand and Right Handsome Right Hand rested for a while. They didn't receive any news from Gu Fei and finally let out a sigh of relief. The three of them left the town building and walked out of the courtyard. They immediately saw a group of people chasing several players on the street in front of the gate. It was common for PK to be chased in the game. The three of them were used to it and didn't think too much about it. However, as they walked down the street, the frequency of PK incidents shocked the three of them. On a very remote street, there were 3 PK incidents at the same time. After the 3 PK incidents ended, the 3 groups of winning players started to look at each other. Not long after, the 3 groups of people started to fight again. During the battle, they would occasionally look at Drifting and the other 2 with a vigilant expression. What happened? Right Love Left Hand was surprised. It must have something to do with that guy, Drifting said. Ask him. Right Handsome Right Hand said. I don't think we need to. Once we asked, he immediately remembered why he called us to go to that damn information room, Drifting said. Right Love Left Hand and Right Handsome Right Hand shivered and nodded. Don't contact him. Block him. I'll ask that Han family young master, Drifting said, and went to contact the Han family young master. When Gu Fei arrived at the Wanted Quest office, he found that in just a short while, the Wanted Quest office wasn't as quiet as it used to be. Moreover, most of the people who came were mages. It was clear that in group battles, mages, as the map's weapon, had an innate advantage in terms of PK points. No matter what, normal players didn't dare to break through the limit of 30 points. So after mages passed 20 points, they had to bite the bullet and come here. In order to ensure the safety of their mages, the teams naturally sent teams to escort them. As a result, many teams coincidentally came to the Wanted Quest office. Once they saw each other, they immediately started fighting. The fighting didn't end. When Gu Fei arrived, these people were in the middle of a negotiation. What they meant was that no one should fight here. Everyone needed to clear their PK points, so they left a path of retreat. Everyone would take their own quests and then do them. The people who came here didn't have low PK points, so they shouldn't kill each other. Originally, everyone agreed with him, but it was this last sentence that immediately stirred up some people's thoughts. The people who came here didn't have low PK points. Killing them once was equivalent to killing them several times, so the Wanted Quest office was a good place to ambush. It was much safer than guarding the resurrection point. It wasn't just one guild that had this evil thought. However, with this thought, they were naturally worried about the safety of their mages. So they didn't immediately launch a sneak attack. They first agreed on the surface and endured this. Everyone quietly took their quests while secretly mobilizing people. They were already preparing to set up an ambush at the Wanted Quest office. A bunch of people were busy. After taking their quests and leaving, they didn't forget to be wary of each other. You go first, you go first, you go first. In the end, almost all of them went out one by one. In the end, as soon as they left, there was a whoosh. A mage was already flying in a white light. Everyone was shocked and started to accuse the other party of not keeping their word. However, just as they were about to start a fight, there was a whoosh. The mage who they were accusing also flew in a white light. This time, everyone saw clearly that the person who killed the person they were protecting was the #1 assassin of the parallel world, Shenli's drunk. Gu Fei didn't know what these players were thinking at this time. He just took the quests from top to bottom according to his PK points. He didn't even look at the coordinates when he saw a bunch of numbers in front of him. Many of the targets were actually at the Wanted Quest office. This Gu Fei wouldn't be polite. He went up and killed them. After killing one, the players realized that it was Shenli's drunk who was killing them. Wanted Quest. If there's nothing else, go. Gu Fei shouted. Everyone wanted to cry. What time was this? Why did this guy have to come out and cause trouble? The players were very hesitant. They didn't know if they should go up and fight Gu Fei. Gu Fei gave a warning and rushed to the next target. Some players didn't have time to think and subconsciously went to protect him. In the end, they were killed by Gu Fei. Following them was the target. They couldn't protect him in time and were turned to dust by Gu Fei's thunder palm. There was chaos outside the Wanted Quest office. At this time, there were many people inside who were hypocritically polite. In the end, another mage came out and Gu Fei killed him with his sword. In the chaos outside the Wanted Quest office, No one came up to attack Gu Fei. They were orderly in the chaos and retreated in all directions, keeping a distance from Gu Fei. Seeing that a mage who had just come out was killed, everyone felt a sense of satisfaction. They stood quietly and watched. The players who came out saw Gu Fei guarding with his sword. They didn't see their mage and didn't know what happened. They heard Gu Fei say, "Wanted quest. If it's fine, get out." The players who came out were in an uproar and hurriedly retreated inside. There were still people coming out. When the door opened, there were people coming in and out, squeezing together. Gu Fei stood on tiptoe and saw that there were still targets inside. He hurriedly maintained order. Don't push. Let those with PK value come out first." Everyone vomited blood. What was going on? Someone bravely came up to negotiate with Gu Fei. "Brother Qianli." He couldn't say anything for a long time. Say what? Wanted quests were for people to do. It was reasonable for Gu Fei to do it. Usually, one could only use overbearing threats to stop it, but now it was Qianli drunk. Who was threatening who? Gu Fei blocked the door and knocked on the door frame with the night streamer. "What are you all doing here? Hurry up and do your own things." If there was too much pressure, there would eventually be resistance. Although Qianli drunk was terrifying, there were still people who overcame their fear. They shouted, "Fight!" and rushed forward. Gu Fei was very calm. He flipped back down the stone steps outside and saw several people rush in. The people watching outside also had an idea. With so many people, should they work together to attack Qianli drunk? These guys had only thought about it for a moment before they gave up on that idea. This was because Thousand Miles drunk took a few steps forward and returned to the stone steps. A circle of flames instantly killed all the hot-blooded men who had rushed out. The person they were protecting, the wanted mage, was still raising his staff and preparing to chant. At this time, he could only open his mouth, but he couldn't say anything. "Wanted quest." Gu Fei shouted as he killed the person. He rushed in and killed anyone with a quest number. The players had lost their will to fight. They all ran out of the door. Gu Fei was calm. He looked at the targets one by one. In the middle, he turned in a quest and wiped out his PK value. Seeing that there were no targets around, he tapped the emblem and activated the new teleportation function. Chapter 8:14. Cloud City was a mess. The guilds were fighting on their own and it was hard to tell who was friend and who was enemy. Among this group of forces, Gu Fei, the fugitive, had once again stepped into the fray. Although the wind-chasing emblem's new teleportation function was extremely random, the increase in efficiency was still very obvious. The explanation emphasized that no matter how one followed, it would definitely be closer. These words were not empty words. Even if one followed from a house to the outside, it was still a few steps closer. The players in Cloud City suddenly had another shadow hanging over their heads. Other than the priests, all the players of other professions were in danger. At this point in the battle, who didn't have some PK points? This was especially true when they discovered that 8,000 Miles Drunk's wanted target was the one with the most PK points. The players who had killed people like flies and were extremely proud of themselves in the guild all panicked. The guild leaders were also very helpless. They could only say, "Fortunately, it's just jail," to comfort everyone. However, it wasn't that there weren't any players who had more than 20 PK points. If they were to go to jail, they would also drop a level. If they wanted to wash their PK points, they would have to. When they heard that the wanted mission office was a place that Qianli's drunken wanted to focus on, a bunch of people gave up on this idea. Therefore, some people were already thinking about whether they should leave this sad place far away. Escaping on foot along the Black Dragon Mountain range was too slow. Who knew if Qianli would catch up to them when he got drunk? Therefore, everyone thought of teleportation scrolls. At this time, in order to save their lives, they couldn't care about saving money. The market for teleportation scrolls in Cloud City suddenly became very popular. However, if they wanted to buy teleportation scrolls at this time, where could they get them? At least, there was absolutely no such thing in the auction house. If there was, it would have long been swept clean by Han family young master. Therefore, they could only find a studio with stock. On the studio side, because of Han family young masters' several large purchases, they had already started paying attention to the demand for teleportation scrolls. In addition, the supply was also a bit short. Now that so many people came to buy, the price skyrocketed. Normal players couldn't afford it at all. They could only beat their chests and stamp their feet in frustration. At this time, a message from Han family young masters saved a lot of players. Can't you have some direction for your quests? Don't kill randomly. What do you mean? Gu Fei was in the middle of killing. You have to let the players know that there are some guilds you can kill and some guilds you can't kill. This way, there will be people who will fight with us on the same front. If you continue killing indiscriminately, you'll force all the players in the city to form an alliance to deal with us. How many idiots worked together to create this situation? It wasn't easy. Don't destroy it. Gu Fei nodded after listening. What you said makes sense. Of course. Then which one should we kill and not kill? Gu Fei asked. If you can't tell them apart, then don't kill them. Han family young master said. I'll try my best. After Gu Fei finished speaking, he looked for Drifting. He sent him a message. Hello. Drifting quickly replied, the user you called will never be there. Please never call again. Gu Fei was depressed. He knew that this guy had gone crazy from checking people in the information room and had already refused to cooperate with him. However, without this guy's information, there was no way for him to identify the quest target. Players' guilds? Nowadays, players don't even wear guild emblems anymore. Would he tell the truth? With this thought, Gu Fei slapped his head. It didn't matter if he told the truth or not. He just wanted everyone to know that there were some guilds he wouldn't kill. As long as he achieved this effect, it was fine. With this thought, Gu Fei activated the wind-chasing emblem and flew up. This time, his luck was quite good. The target was right in front of him. Moreover, the people with him and the opponents they were fighting all had a serial number. This was one of the characteristics of Cloud City. Almost everyone had a PK value. This was a huge advantage for Gu Fei. He flew towards a coordinate and often found multiple targets at the same time. Gu Fei wondered if he could go back to the wanted mission office and accept all the missions in Cloud City. That way, he wouldn't have to search anymore. Everyone on the streets was a target for him to kill. As he thought about it, he rushed forward and shouted, "Wanted quest!" Gu Fei left out the words, "If there's nothing else, just get out of here." Because the people in front of him all had a serial number, and they were all his quests. This meant that these two were probably elite parties, and all of them were experts with a few PK points. Which guild are you from? Gu Fei used a new term. The two teams panicked when they saw Gu Fei, but when they heard him ask about the guild, they were stunned. One of the people on the left stood out. His face was covered in sweat and mud. It was unknown how this PK was done. He nodded at Gu Fei and said, "Brother Qianli, it's us. We're drinking and singing." Gu Fei didn't really know Shan Xiling. He was just one of the people he had killed before. Hearing that they were drinking and singing, Gu Fei nodded and said, "Oh, then you guys can go. I'm here for a mission." The people in drinking and singing were overjoyed. So Qianli didn't kill them when he was drunk? But there were guild members that were sent to jail by him. What was going on? It was probably a misunderstanding. The people thought about it and quickly moved to the side. They gestured to Gu Fei and said, "Please, please." Looking at the opponents in front of them, their eyes were full of schadenfreude. "Which guild are you guys from?" Gu Fei turned to look at the people in drinking and singing. These people had obviously lost their sense of propriety. In front of the people in drinking and singing, they actually dared to say, "We're the ones who are singing and singing, they're fake." Damn. Shan Xiling was furious. He took out his badge and proudly put it on. "Do you guys have it?" The others followed suit and put on their helmets, showing off to the opposing players. "Do you guys have helmets?" Gu Fei nodded. "It's good to wear it, it makes it easier to recognize people." Shan Xiling and the others were touched. Sure enough, it was a misunderstanding before. If they were wearing the badge, Qianli wouldn't have attacked them when he was drunk. "Guild leader, you miscalculated this time. In fact, When the people in drinking and singing were wanted, some people asked the guild leader if they were not on their side. How could they be killed by Qianli when he was drunk? At that time, Upstream unexpectedly understood Gu Fei. At that time, the situation had completely escalated into a fight between the guilds. Why would Qianli care about you when he was drunk? That person didn't care about feelings. Upstream thought about the 2 sentences that Qianli threw at him when he was trapped at the resurrection point to gain sympathy. The taste of the instant heart reliever lingered in his mouth. At this time, after receiving Shan Ziling's message, Upstream was also pleasantly surprised. It turned out that Qianli didn't forget about them when he was drunk. Upstream was moved and immediately personally sent a message to Gu Fei, asking about his well-being. Gu Fei was busy at this time. The people in front of him without badges were childishly trying to impersonate them. Of course, Gu Fei didn't hesitate to make a move. The other side didn't resist and split up to run. Shan Ziling and the others wanted to stop them, but they were afraid of stealing their target and angering Qianli, so they could only watch dumbfoundedly. As a result, they saw an incredible scene. They saw Qianli chase after a target, kill it, then teleport, chase after the next target, kill it again, and teleport again. Moreover, the distance of this teleportation was done without any pattern. Sometimes he directly moved in front of the target to block them, sometimes he only moved a few steps, and the last time he teleported, the target had already disappeared. Everyone thought that Qianli would stop and greet them, but who would have thought that with a flash of white light, Qianli would also disappear? Shan Ziling and the others didn't have enough brains to process it. Their minds were filled with Gu Fei's flashing figure, one moment at a street corner, the next moment at a corner. It was really strange. Shan Ziling was dumbfounded for a while before sending a message to Countercurrent. 1,000 miles drunk, it seems like there's a new skill. What kind of skill? Upstream asked. I'm not sure. It seems to be a teleportation skill, but it seems to be random and not controlled by someone. Shan Ziling was indeed an expert. Seeing Gu Fei's strange teleportation, he concluded that it was random. Random? Upstream only knew that the task of killing Qianli was getting harder and harder. He even had a running style that he himself didn't know where to go next. Regardless, it's great that he isn't targeting us now. Shan Ziling was happy. Of course. Upstream nodded and quickly notified the whole guild. As long as they encountered Qianli, they were to quickly report their guild name and show their guild badge. This kind of news always spread very quickly, and it didn't take long for many players to know that Qianli had a special exemption for singing and drinking. This made the players jealous and even more eager to kill the players who sang and drinking. Only then did Upstream realize that the pressure of becoming allies with Qianli was quite great. As a result, a very strange scene occurred. When they encountered Qianli, all the players would immediately say that they were people who sang and drinking, but when they encountered other opponents, all the players would fiercely shake their heads and say that they were definitely not people who sang and drinking. Of course, it wasn't easy to say it wasn't, but it also required a badge to prove it. Some people tried to fool Gu Fei with their own guild badge, which was really challenging Gu Fei's eyesight. Of course, their fates were very miserable. When Unsworn Sword received this news, he felt a bit sour. Upstream Sprat, who was the first to get drunk with Qianli, was pardoned at this time. As for his own guild, there were already more than 20 people who were sent to the dungeon by Qianli, and all of them were experts. Oathless Sword was feeling gloomy. However, there was good news. After a guild member honestly reported his guild to Qianli, he was also pardoned. So we won't be killed too? Unsworn Sword was excited, and naturally took the initiative to express his goodwill to Gu Fei. Then, Rosy Clouds was also spared by Gu Fei. At this time, Unchung Mutsu's black index finger was like a mirror. Qianli didn't lose his mind after getting drunk and was still ruthlessly targeting them. As for Gu Fei, he let 3 big guilds go, and it was really painful. After all, there were many experts in the big guilds, and naturally, they were heavy targets with high PK value. Now, he could only watch and not kill them. What a pity! However, Gu Fei also understood the situation. He needed a direction for his quest, and he needed people to see what his quest was about. This was the direction that Han family young master had mentioned. In this situation, it was clear that Shepherd Cloud Guild and Black Alliance were spared. His confidence in Wine Wind Songs, Unhindered, Rosy Clouds, and their allies was greatly boosted. They all felt like there was a powerful figure behind them, protecting them. However, against the current soon felt awkward. Even though it was hard to tell who was who, they knew that Drunken Music was actually working with Shepherd Clouds and Black Alliance to attack Unhindered 4Cs first. At least, that was their strategy. Qianli probably doesn't know about this because he's drunk, but if he does. Upstream was nervous. If he made a wrong move, he would be in big trouble. Therefore, he decided to negotiate with Unsworn Sword, and expressed his willingness to fight Shepherd Cloud Guild and Black Alliance together. Unsworn Sword, on the other hand, was a little confused. His original intention was to watch the show from the sidelines, but in the end, he went against the flow and started a war with this group of people, dragging himself into it. His aggro was mainly on Wine Wind Songs, but the target of his aggro suddenly said that he wanted to fight with him and destroy Shepherd Cloud Guild and Black Alliance together. Unsworn Sword replied to Upstream in confusion, "Why should I fight with them? They started the war first." Against the Current said, "Then you weren't the one who started it?" Unsworn Sword asked. Upstream was stunned. "That's right. How could I forget that Unsworn Sword's opponent was me? Now that I want to negotiate with him, doesn't that mean he's going to back out of the fight? Doesn't that mean we're back to the starting point? I'm fighting with those two guilds. I can't just watch the show from the sidelines. Why is our relationship so complicated?" Upstream's head was starting to hurt. He felt that Qianli might as well not have given them a pardon when he was drunk. He was now in a dilemma. Actually, Gu Fei was still fighting against Unchung Mutsu and Black Index Finger angrily because he was killed for breaking into the prison. He didn't think too much about the checks and balances between their guilds. One moment they would ally with you, the next moment they would start a war with you, the next moment they would drag you down with them, and the next moment they would beat you when you're down. Black Index Finger and Unchung Mutsu were opponents. This was what Gu Fei believed. As for the matter between Upstream and Unsworn Sword, Gu Fei didn't even think about it. At this time, Gu Fei continued to work hard on his quests. He let go of the three big guilds and lost so many important targets. Gu Fei tried hard to make up for it in other areas. When he met a target, he would ask the guild and let go of those with the emblems of those three guilds. However, there were some small and medium-sized guilds that were allies of these three guilds, so they took it for granted that they wouldn't be killed. They confidently reported their names, showed their badges, and were then killed. They were confused, thinking that it was some kind of misunderstanding. In the end, after being killed a few more times, they realized that it wasn't a misunderstanding at all. It was most likely that people from 1,000 miles away didn't even know of their existence. So they quickly contacted their guild leader and told Qianli that he was drunk. So Unsworn Sword and the others all messaged Gu Fei, one guild after another, asking Gu Fei to let them go. Gu Fei was in a difficult position. "I remember the name, but I don't recognize the emblems. How do I recognize them?" "It's okay, you'll get to know them slowly," the guild leaders said. They realized that they were asking Gu Fei to recognize nearly 3/5 of the guild emblems in Cloud City. This was a bit difficult. So Gu Fei, with the spirit of get to know them slowly, familiarized himself with the emblems of the various guilds as he killed. At this time, Unchung Mutsu and the others had gotten the upper hand. The big guilds couldn't get away, but the small and medium-sized guilds hoped to use Upstream to protect them. Upstream already felt uneasy working with them. At this time, why would he help them to fool Gu Fei? Naturally, he was playing dumb. Unchung Mutsu and the others were furious. They suddenly turned their guns and started fighting against Singing Wine. Singing Wine was suddenly caught in the middle and had enemies on both sides. Upstream was dumbfounded. This time, standing on top of the wall was a joke. He stood in the middle, but both sides were shouting at him. He actually had nowhere to fall. The tragedy of a fence-sitter was nothing more than this. Upstream didn't have any ideas. If this went on, Singing Wine would be the first to die. Helpless, Gu Fei became his last hope. He hurriedly called for help from Gu Fei, saying that he couldn't hold on any longer. If you can't hold on, run. Run to the revival point, run to the other main cities or something. Gu Fei said, "Help us." They wailed against the current. "I've been killing without stopping." Gu Fei said, "This was the truth." "I know, but now." When Upstream thought about how he got caught in the middle of both sides, he didn't know how to explain this to Qianli. Even though he had always been eloquent, he was at a loss for words. Qianli obviously wouldn't help him talk to Uncheng Mutsu and the others when he was drunk. He could only hope for Unsworn Sword. However, if Qianli were to ask, "Why did you fight with Unsworn Sword?" Upstream wouldn't be able to answer that question. Upstream suddenly went silent. Gu Fei didn't care too much and continued his quest. After wiping out another group of people, he suddenly felt something strange beside him. A hand had actually grabbed his arm. Gu Fei was shocked. Someone had appeared beside him without him noticing and had already grabbed him. This definitely wasn't something a normal player could do. What kind of strange skill was this? For a moment, Gu Fei didn't have time to think. His instincts from practicing martial arts allowed him to react in order to get out of this situation. He lowered his body and held the Night Streamer sword in his other hand. He slashed out at a tricky angle. The skill, Dual Flame Flash, in the game obviously couldn't be left out. Gu Fei was confident that no one would be able to dodge this slash. His expectations weren't wrong. The person behind him was completely defenseless and didn't react to the slash. However, the slash actually passed through the other party's body without any resistance. Gu Fei was startled. What was this? An illusion skill? He thought of Drifting's Ice Shadow, but Drifting's illusions would also dissipate when attacked. It wasn't like this. Just as he was about to try again, the person actually said, "You can't kill anymore." What? Gu Fei was startled. The person smiled bitterly. "You can't continue the quest. Cloud City's dungeon is about to be filled up by you. What will happen when it's full? The system doesn't have a response in this area." "For you." Gu Fei was confused. "Tim?" the person said. Chapter 8:15. Gu Fei sized up the person in front of him. This really was a guy who appeared as a GM. Yi Xiaowu said he was a game worker, but in the game he appeared as a proper player. He had a profession and skills, and he would lose levels if he was killed. But this person in front of him, Gu Fei's sword pierced right through him. He tried to use Identify, and the place that should have displayed his profession was GM 264, and his level was level 1. Other than that, there was no other information. This person's attire also looked like game equipment, but it didn't show anything under Identify. "What did you say?" Gu Fei asked. "It's like this. Due to the current chaotic situation in Cloud City, and your high efficiency in completing bounty quests, Cloud City's dungeons are about to be filled up. When the number of people exceeds the limit, where will the players be teleported to? If the system doesn't respond to this, it might cause errors in the game. Therefore, I'll have to trouble you to wait for a while," GM 264 patiently explained in detail. "Then hurry up and expand the dungeons. You're asking me to stop, but you're not solving the problem." Gu Fei was dissatisfied. I know. Now, the planners have already started to work on this, but we still need time. So we can only ask you to stop for a while." GM 264 said. "Is it okay if I stop? What about the others?" Gu Fei asked. "You only need to stop for a while. There are still some empty spots in the dungeons. You should be able to hold on for a while." GM 264 said. "This is a big deal. Then if I stop, what about my continuous quests? Won't I have to start all over again?" Gu Fei was mainly talking about the continuous bounty quests needed to level up the Windchaser boots. This was the most difficult to complete, and sometimes it would lead to failure due to accidents. For example, a target who had just received a quest, but their PK value was about to be wiped out, and they just happened to go offline. These were all situations that even the gods couldn't save. Gu Fei had come at a good time. Currently, the battle between players was intense. Their PK points would only increase, not decrease. It was also impossible for players to log off at the last minute. This was the best time to upgrade the Windchaser boots. After all, speed was something that Gu Fei loved. GM 264 was in tears. They were worried that the entire game might go wrong, but this person was talking to them about the continuity of his mission. Before GM 264 entered the game, it went without saying that he had done his research on Qianli Drunk. The gaming company did not reveal this to the public, but they had been keeping an eye on the game's operations behind the scenes. They knew that this player was a unique anomaly in the game. However, the situation that he had created was something that none of the people in the gaming company could have predicted. It was because this player's gaming style was inhuman. Wanted missions were high-risk and low-reward missions. Who would love them so much? Even if he was a player who loved PvP, he should have become a wanton murderer who slaughtered people on the streets. He was such a violent person, but he was also firmly bound by morals. Such a contradiction was not something an ordinary person could imagine. It was not scary for a person to do something once in a while. However, if one persisted in doing something, it would result in a different outcome. Gu Fei persisted in the wanted mission and received a series of rewards. He joined the faction and obtained a wanted license. Then, his wanted license was upgraded by winning the city war. Little by little, all kinds of conditions were gathered on Gu Fei. However, he still persisted in the wanted mission. Coincidentally, the chaotic battle in Cloud City broke out. Gu Fei had a gorgeous set of wanted equipment, and with his insane skills, he finally challenged the vacuum of the system. The parallel world's operations were considered fair. At this time, if they were to be despicable and forcefully cut off Gu Fei's game, no matter how strong he was, he would only be an ordinary player among tens of millions of players. He would not be able to connect to the game, and he would not be able to cause any trouble. However, the gaming company had sent a GM to explain the situation to him. Don't worry about the continuity of the mission. We will ensure the interests of every player fairly. I believe you can see our sincerity by coming here to explain this to you, right? GM 264 tried its best to communicate with Gu Fei. Gu Fei nodded. He could see the kindness of the gaming company. However, since Gu Fei felt that he was not responsible for this, he took it as a matter of course. He was more concerned about the continuity of his mission, so he asked, "How do you guarantee my mission?" "We will now help you cancel all of your current incomplete missions, disregarding any failures. Once the dungeon's problem is solved, you can reapply for a new mission. This way, no mission will fail because of your pause and cause your continuity to be disrupted. Is that okay?" GM 264 said. "Oh, that's fine." Gu Fei was a reasonable person. He was quite satisfied with the way the gaming company handled things. As long as it was reasonable, of course, he would not be unreasonable, nor would he take the opportunity to make some unreasonable demands. GM 264 completed the negotiation and let out a long sigh. It smiled at Gu Fei and said, "Thank you for your support in our work. Our gaming company always rewards players who discover bugs in the game. You can be considered to have discovered a bug in the game. We will contact you after we're done." "Oh, what kind of reward?" Gu Fei was curious. "Cash reward." GM 264 smiled. The gaming company would not give out virtual in-game rewards in a place like this. Of course, it would be a different matter if the players used the money to buy in-game gold or other rewards. "Oh, wait a little longer." Gu Fei saw that GM 264 was about to leave, so he quickly stopped it. "How long will it take?" "I'm not too sure, but don't worry, we will contact you as soon as we're done with this problem," GM 264 said. "What if I want to wash my PK value during this time?" Gu Fei asked. "Wash your PK value?" GM 264 was confused. "You've seen the chaos in Cloud City. It's not convenient for your PK value to reach 30. When it's close to 30, you have to wash it. Now that I can't do wanted missions, what should I do?" Gu Fei said. GM 264 was obviously not prepared for this question. After a moment of hesitation, it said, "You can't do missions in Cloud City for now, but you can do it in other major cities." "It's not convenient in other major cities?" Gu Fei said. "How about this? The wind-chasing emblem's teleportation function can't cross major cities. but we'll temporarily fix it for you so that it can teleport across major cities. Isn't that convenient? GM 264 said. If that's the case, then I'll make do with it for now. Gu Fei reluctantly accepted it. Then, once again, thank you for supporting our work. I'm GM 264. Our conversation this time has been recorded and recorded. If you have any comments, feel free to post them on the official homepage or through the 24-hour service hotline. I wish you a happy game. After GM 264's final sentence, it immediately disappeared. Unlike the players who would still have a white light when they went offline, the players disappeared without a trace. They directly turned into thin air. Gu Fei seemed to have thought of something and opened the quest list. Sure enough, all of his unfinished quests had been temporarily erased. Once the problem was solved, he could start accepting missions again and continue his wanted missions. His continuous record was still maintained. However, he didn't know how long it would take for these people to solve the problem. Now was the best time to complete a wanted mission. Gu Fei regretfully thought as he sent a message to the Han family young master. I can't do the wanted mission anymore. But the GM looked for me and said that the dungeon in Cloud City is almost full. If it explodes, there's a chance that the game will malfunction. I don't know what the consequences will be. Gu Fei said, Fuck really? Did you get tricked by some random guy who pretended to be a GM? Did someone called himself a gamer or something send you a message? The Han family young master asked. No, it's true. Gu Fei described the magic of GM 264 and what happened. So you've already agreed? The Han family young master said. Of course. I really want to see what will happen if the game malfunctions. Should I summon some people to do the wanted mission? The Han family young master said. In the end, the monitoring department of the game immediately exploded. They shouted everywhere, Attention, attention, there's still a dangerous person here. There's still a dangerous person here. The crisis that Gu Fei created this time was taken seriously. When he first started doing quests crazily and cleared nearly 400 PK points, the monitoring department that noticed the situation joked that if this continued, the dungeon would be full. Who would have thought that after Gu Fei's Windchaser emblem leveled up, he would become more efficient and focused on completing the wanted mission. At this time, the number of players with PK points in Cloud City also skyrocketed. There were more and more players in the dungeon. The faces of the monitoring department gradually changed. After a simulation test, they found that if this continued, the dungeon would really explode. The news was quickly passed on to the higher-ups. An emergency response plan was immediately proposed and implemented. The game company's actions of negotiating with Gu Fei, rather than saying that they had good manners, it was better to say that they were being polite before resorting to force. If Gu Fei refused the game company's request and continued doing things his own way, the game company would definitely not hesitate to forcefully cut off his connection with the game. At this time, the game company would be on the side of morality and would no longer have to worry about the consequences. Gu Fei had already agreed to the request in his negotiation with GM 264, but this didn't make the game company relax their surveillance on him. At this time, the surveillance level had increased. Gu Fei's words and actions in the game were closely monitored. Of course, the news of him and the Han family young master was seen by others. Seeing that the Han family young master wanted the world to be in chaos, the monitoring department's comrades were the first to panic. Someone suggested to immediately send a GM to negotiate with the Han family young master. But at this crucial moment, the leader was still calm. He waved his hand, put this person under special surveillance as well. Pay attention to his actions first. If he was just joking, wouldn't it be a joke if we sent the GM to look for him? Hearing this, everyone immediately praised the leader's wise decision. At the same time, they put the Han family young master's words and actions under the highest level of surveillance. In the end, someone immediately shouted, "This guy is really up to something. He's writing a message." What? The leader felt that the person might have just said it casually as a joke. At this time, he was also shocked. He rushed over and shouted, "Cut off his message first. Where's the GM?" Wait, he erased it again. The subordinate reported again. What did he write? The leader strode over to the surveillance department. He wrote something about a wanted mission with a random grand prize. He wants everyone to do it, that person reported. This lie might be a little childish. He's probably rephrasing his words. Cut off his message first and continue to pay attention to his intentions. As the leader spoke, he had already arrived in front of the surveillance camera that was monitoring the Han family young master. However, he saw that the subordinate who was guarding the monitor had an extremely ugly expression. He turned the monitor around so that the leader could clearly see the new message written by the Han family young master. Are you monitoring me? Haha, I'm just joking. I'm just teasing you. The leader was stunned. The other colleagues all felt that there might be something unusual here. They gathered together and saw the message that the Han family young master had obviously written for them to see. The group of people looked at each other. No one said anything. The entire surveillance department only had the sound of the computer running. The words on the screen were still flashing, and the message was erased again. Everyone watched as another string of words jumped in front of them. Well then, I'm going to continue the game. Have a good day at work, everyone. The people in the room had ferocious expressions. They could only be described as gnashing their teeth. The staff sitting in front of the control desk tried very hard to restrain himself from destroying this account. Everyone in the room was thinking over and over again about how to deal with this player so that they could vent their anger. However, the tragic thing was that their professionalism told them that they couldn't do that. Therefore, they could only do it in their minds. Thinking of this, everyone felt extremely pained. In the end, the leader was the one who had the most bearing. Seeing that the Han family young master was really writing a message on the screen, he waved his hand again. Remove the message from him. The staff reluctantly did as he was told. Should we continue monitoring him? Someone asked. The people in the room were instantly conflicted. If they monitored him, what if he was teased and looked down on? If they didn't monitor him, what if he really went to do something? However, the leader had a businesslike expression. Continue monitoring him. Monitor all the players who know the current situation in the dungeon. If I knew this would happen, I would have told Qianli not to leak the secret when he was drunk, someone said. It's an emergency. It's hard to not think of things, another person said. But Qianli doesn't seem like a meddlesome person when he's drunk, another person said. But what about that guy? What a beast! One of them concluded, which received positive praise from all his colleagues. The office was filled with applause. In the game, Gu Fei was quite lonely. He couldn't do the quest. He could PK, but he couldn't find a target. In addition, he had gone against the current and revealed a few more guilds. Gu Fei had very few targets to kill, especially since no one was wearing a guild badge. If Gu Fei went up and asked them directly, the players who had gone against them would feel guilty and wouldn't tell the truth. In the end, after a few rounds, there were no players that Gu Fei could recognize. He was probably looking for Drifting's help. But this guy was determined not to serve Gu Fei anymore. He pretended to be dead and refused to reply. Gu Fei couldn't do anything about it. Gu Fei was just feeling lonely. The most painful thing in the game was going against the current, being stuck between two walls and being stabbed by people from both sides. Singing and drinking became more and more unbearable, and the players' levels dropped rapidly. The lower they dropped, the weaker they became, and the weaker they became. Going against the current, there was no one to negotiate with. In the end, the guild had no choice but to order those who entered the resurrection point to never come out. With Singing Wine's retreat, the small and medium-sized guilds that were under its protection immediately lost their momentum and were chased around in an extremely sorry state. But they weren't like Singing Wine who had no way out. When they really couldn't take it anymore, they quickly gave in. For example, they firmly expressed to Unsworn Sword that they would stand on his side in the future. Of course, Unsworn Sword was very pleased with their loyalty, so he decided to let them go. Slowly, the flames of war in Cloud City became weaker and weaker. Outside the resurrection point, there was already a lot of scolding because those who couldn't beat them anymore. They were completely holed up in the resurrection point and didn't want to come out. Gu Fei walked a few rounds and realized the situation. He was anxious. The problem of the dungeon hadn't been solved yet. How could there be signs of a ceasefire in the battle royal? Looking at the time, more than an hour had passed. What kind of work quality did the people in this game company have? Gu Fei was furious. Lan Yi and Tsubasa Sakuratsuka's people who walked from Moonlit Night City had finally arrived. These two said they were here to help Gu Fei, but when they arrived, the first person they contacted wasn't Gu Fei, but Boundless Mang. Boundless Mang didn't understand and sent a message to ask Gu Fei what these people were doing coming and going. Oh, they're back? Gu Fei's mind wasn't on this at the moment. Yes, they're all here. What's the plan on your side? Plan? Ask that person. Gu Fei said. In the end, Han family young master's message arrived. There's only a bunch of soldiers left. We can go clean up the trash. I've been walking around for a long time, but I can't find an opponent. Gu Fei said. Fun? Why don't you ask against the current, ask sort of no oath, they'll clearly tell you. Han family young master said. That's right. Gu Fei suddenly understood. Currently, Singing for Wine seems to have lost, and they've all retreated to the revival point. Unchung Mutsu and the others are organizing people. It looks like they're preparing to accept a bounty mission and kill their way into the revival point to drag out these people. Han family young master said. I can accept the bounty mission? You can always accept it, but you're an exception. Han family young master said calmly. Fuck. So many people want it, but it's still not enough for me? Seems like it. Am I right? Han family young master said. What do you mean, am I right? Gu Fei was confused. That half wasn't for you to see. Han family young master said. What is it? Gu Fei didn't understand. The room full of workers that were monitoring the situation started crying again. Chapter 8:16. After Boundless Mang contacted the Han family young master, this guy didn't hold back at all and started to give orders. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka didn't mind, but Lan Yi was especially unhappy. He didn't have a good impression of Qianli or the Han family young master. He was only here to give face to Boundless Mang, and now he was being criticized. One could imagine how he felt. Fortunately, being ordered around by this person wasn't as disgusting as being ordered around by Yunzhong Mu. Plus, with Boundless Mang's advice, Lan Yi finally endured it and listened to the Han family young master's orders. The Han family young master arranged things on this side while saying to Gu Fei, those guys are going to take a bounty mission. Since we already guessed it, then we should go and ambush them. At the same time, we can relieve some pressure in the dungeon. No need to thank me, ha. What are you saying? What are you thanking me for? Gu Fei felt that the Han family young master was being ridiculous. That sentence wasn't meant for you either. The Han family young master said. This guy isn't done. The staff in front of the surveillance screen angrily slammed the table and turned around to look at their leader. The leader was still calm and only lightly said, continue to monitor. Thus, the staff continued to work even more angrily than Lan Yi. Their keystrokes were deafening. Lan Yi and the others, under the Han family young master's orders, all split up and entered Cloud City in 2s and 3s. At this time, the flames of war in the city hadn't been completely extinguished. A standard team of 10 or so people looked like they were participating guilds and would definitely be attacked. Not to mention a team of over 100 people. On the contrary, these teams of 2s and 3s or simply going alone didn't attract much attention. The guilds in Cloud City wanted to use this method, but they couldn't. After killing for so long, many of them had already killed mature faces. If they saw faces, they would kill them. If they were in 2s or 3s or were alone, then they would kill even more diligently. Can we make it in time? Gu Fei asked the Han family young master as he sprinted towards the wanted mission office. Your speed is fine. It doesn't matter if others are a little late. Han family young master said. Thus, without another word, Gu Fei arrived at the wanted mission office. Fortunately, the surveillance personnel had also monitored their communication. Otherwise, Gu Fei's actions would have made them nervous to death. After Gu Fei arrived at the wanted mission office, he walked around and found that there weren't many people. Since he had killed a few big bosses in this area during his first bounty quest, the other players didn't dare to come here anymore. Seeing that his target hadn't appeared yet, he wanted to sit on the steps, but he thought that it would be too obvious if he sat there. Perhaps no one would dare to come. After thinking about it, he went back into the door and hid. However, Gu Fei's actions were already seen by others. The reflection of years had brought their archer team to receive the quest. They were trying very hard to capture singing and drinking in one fell swoop. At this time, when they emerged from a street, they saw Qianli drunk pacing up and down the steps for a while before entering the door. The reflection of years hurriedly stopped their advance. Wait, Qianli drunk. Qianli drunk won't attack our guild. A player behind him was excited. That was before. Now that the city war is almost over, do you think Qianli drunk will continue to give you face? The reflection of years said without turning his head. Other than Gu Fei and the Han family young master, most players didn't know that Cloud City's dungeons were full and that Gu Fei's quests were restricted. Then what do we do now? Someone asked. Let's wait. He might be receiving a quest and then he'll leave. The reflection of years said. Then what if he receives us? We're so close. A person said in horror. As members of the archer team, their PK value wasn't low. Shut your crow's mouth. A group of people surrounded the person and beat him to the ground. The reflection of years calmly waited while communicating with Sword without oath, but he didn't see Gu Fei come out again. Could he have left? The reflection of years muttered in his heart. He turned around and called out to someone, "You, go in and take a look." This person was shocked. Wasn't this a suicide quest? He hurriedly shook his head and made excuses. The reflection of years was furious. Qianli drunk is a wanted quest right now. He won't die even if we kill him. He'll just have to suffer a bit in jail. What are you afraid of? Then the person with the lowest PK value should go. This person was really smart and immediately thought of a way to escape. The reflection of years heard that it made sense, so he turned around and asked, "What's the PK value?" In the end, the person with the lowest PK value was chosen. He could only bite the bullet and run toward the wanted quest office, looking around furtively along the way. The reflection of years group was focused, but they didn't know that someone behind them had discovered them. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka arrived quite quickly with a few of his brothers. He hurriedly reported to the Han family young master that there was an ambush. There's already an ambush? The Han family young master frowned. Could someone move faster than him? So he messaged Gu Fei again. Gu Fei was very puzzled. He didn't see anything. Thinking of this, he pulled open the door and walked out of the wanted mission office. In the end, he bumped into the scouting archer who was cautiously pushing open the door. Seeing that Gu Fei was right in front of him, the archer cried out in alarm and turned around to run away. Gu Fei flew after him. The reflection of years and the others who were hiding in the street were also panicking. This person escaped like this. Didn't he attract Qianli's attention? A bunch of people were very sad and angry, reprimanding this person for not having a spirit of sacrifice. In order to escape, he wanted to harm everyone. When they saw Gu Fei teleport in front of the person and stop him, they all breathed a sigh of relief and cheered for Gu Fei. Of course, they could only think about it and couldn't say it out loud. But then they saw Gu Fei and the guy say a few words. Suddenly, the two of them turned around and walked toward the street where they were hiding. The crowd was suddenly in chaos again. Someone shouted angrily, "Fuck, this kid sold us out. Kick him, kick him." Shouts rang out. "Don't panic." The reflection of years scolded. Gu Fei and the player were already in front of him. The reflection of years took a deep breath and walked out. Everyone's faces were covered with sadness. It was as if they would never see their vice president again. "What are you doing?" Gu Fei went up to greet him. The reflection of years was relieved when he heard this. This didn't sound like a greeting that was about to kill someone, so he replied, "I'm taking a wanted quest." "Are you clearing a PK?" Gu Fei asked. "Sort of." The reflection of years said. He then asked, "What are you doing?" The reflection of years was more concerned about this question. "I'm waiting for someone." Gu Fei smiled. "Waiting for someone?" The reflection of years was puzzled. Waiting for Unchung Mutsu and Black Index Finger. They should be coming, right? Gu Fei was going to confirm the information from the reflection of years. Whether they were friend or foe, they should be able to see more than him and the Han family young master. They should be coming. The reflection of years didn't even think about it before betraying those two. Now that Wine for Glory had lost, Unhindered Four Seas couldn't establish a long-term relationship with Shepherd of Clouds or Black Alliance. These two guilds weren't in a good situation either. They had offended this troublesome guy in front of them. At this time, Unhindered Four Seas was more than happy to kick them while they were down. They definitely wouldn't have anything to do with these two guilds. Oh, that's good. You guys take the quest and leave, Gu Fei said. The reflection of years nodded and waved his hand. Figures appeared from the streets one after another and rushed towards the wanted quest office. Normal players weren't Gu Fei. They could only pick up quests one by one. In the end, they weren't even sure if the quests were from singing to wine. They could only return to the spawn point. If they saw a quest that had been picked up, they would kill it. If they didn't, there was nothing they could do. Gu Fei thought that they were clearing a PK. In the end, after a bunch of people took the quest, the ones who made a mistake directly took the quest from the person next to them. Amidst a wave of curses, the group of people left just like that. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka peeked out from the street and greeted Gu Fei. Brother drunk, what's the situation? The enemy hasn't arrived yet. Gu Fei said. Where are our people? Not yet. Then we'll lie in ambush. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka led a few of his brothers and immediately slipped into a corner. Let me know if there's a situation. Gu Fei saw that Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was watching outside and felt more at ease as he returned to the house. The reflection of years and his group left with sweat on their foreheads. He could see through 8,000 Miles Drunk's intentions. This guy had already predicted the current situation of Song to Drink. He knew that he would use the bounty quest to eliminate the people in the resurrection point. Fortunately, he had locked his target on Mu Yun and the Black Alliance. The reflection of years felt that they were extraordinarily lucky this time. They did it, but someone else took the blame. How happy would it be if it was like this every day? As the reflection of years' thoughts ran wild, he met a group of people. He looked up and saw that the leader was Unchung Mutsu. He was a warrior, so the team with him definitely wouldn't be fast. He also didn't dare to travel alone, so he was much slower than the reflection of years' team. The two sides were still in a cooperative relationship, so they were quite polite on the surface. Unchung Mutsu waved at the reflection of years. Did you take the quest? Yes. Did you make a lot of mistakes? Unchung Mutsu asked. A little. The reflection of years said. Someone in the team was already dejected and said helplessly, there's a quest on the other side. Of course, the other side referred to Unchung Mutsu's people, which obviously didn't match their original intentions. Hearing this, Unchung Mutsu smiled. Just in time. Tell us the mission numbers you made a mistake, so we can avoid it. You're going to die soon, and you're still concerned about this. The reflection of years thought silently in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. He told the Unchung Mutsu several mission numbers that they made a mistake. You guys go ahead, we'll be there soon. Unchung Mutsu kept the mission numbers and continued to lead the team. The reflection of years silently watched the team jump into the fire pit, and he didn't know what to feel. At this time, another player came up to him. Vice Leader, let's go and take a look? Don't be nosy. The reflection of years stopped these people from gossiping and left with his people. Outside the wanted quest office, everything was as usual. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and a few of his brothers used their peeping Tom's concentration to keep a close watch. At this time, the players in their group with speed had arrived one after another. They each looked for a place to hide, and those who couldn't find a place went straight into the house. Once the door was closed, they couldn't see anything from the outside. However, once they entered the house, they would be next to Qianli, and they couldn't help but feel a sense of pressure. Brother Zue! Someone's coming! Finally, there was news from Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Identity confirmed? Gu Fei asked. Confirmed. I recognize Unchung Matsu, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. How many of our people have arrived? Gu Fei asked. I'm not too sure about that. Pretty much all of our people have arrived, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Are there any tactical arrangements? Gu Fei asked. Han family young master hasn't arrived yet. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. This guy was the commander. Then you can make the arrangements first. Where are they? Gu Fei said. They're almost there. They're going up the stairs, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. And so, without another word, Gu Fei pulled open the door and walked out. Unchung Matsu was at the very front, and he was in a pretty good mood. Even though a lot of people were dragged into Qianli's drunk quest in the process, it was important to know that the people killed in the quest would only go to jail and wouldn't lose levels. In other words, their strength was preserved. On the other hand, Unchung Matsu and Unchung Matsu, who were pardoned by Qianli's drunk quest, had a lot of experts who lost levels from each other. Unchung Matsu was calculating the strength of the big guilds. He felt that they might actually have the advantage, but the matter of them and Qianli's drunk quest wasn't over yet. Just thinking about it gave him a headache. It was still hurting. In front of him, the door to the wanted office suddenly opened, and the drunk Qianli, who had given him a headache, appeared in front of him. Unchung Matsu turned pale with fright, and the players following him were also in chaos. Gu Fei didn't say anything and rushed forward to slash, but Unchung Matsu's reaction was fast, and he had already used charge to slide to the side. Dual flame flash swept out. Unchung Matsu ran quickly to dodge, but the few players following him were instantly killed. Surround him! Surround him! Unchung Matsu roared. When he couldn't catch up to Qianli, he had fantasized countless times about how he would command his subordinates to surround Qianli when drunk appeared in front of him. But when Qianli really appeared in front of him, he panicked. He only shouted, surround him, which was no different from not having a command at all. Moments later, a white light shone from the crowd. Qianli easily charged out and charged straight at Unchung Matsu. Whirlwind slash. Unchung Matsu took a step forward and unleashed a skill. Whirlwind slash was originally an offensive skill, but against Qianli, it could only be used as a defensive skill. Unchung Matsu was also very experienced. This skill was released at the perfect time, and Gu Fei couldn't find any openings, so he could only temporarily dodge. With their guild leader personally holding the line, no one dared to scatter and run away. Everyone comforted themselves with the thought that they would be going to jail if they were slashed, so they gathered their courage and charged at Gu Fei again. But at that moment, a message in the guild channel made everyone lose their fighting spirit. The players who were killed by Gu Fei clearly sent a message in the channel, "We're not going to jail, but we've all lost levels. Qianli's drunk isn't doing a wanted quest." There was an uproar. Aside from clerics, every player present had PK value. Even the lowest among them would lose 2 levels in one hit. Seeing the few players who had charged forward furiously, unable to retreat in time and instantly killed by Gu Fei, the remaining players became even more terrified. They no longer cared about their guild leader holding the line and turned tail to flee. "Ah, that's too fast." Tsubasa Sakuratsuka cried out in shock. He thought that Gu Fei was the only one on his side, and there were so many of them. He thought that it would take a while for them to fight. He didn't expect such a large team to run away so quickly after losing a few players. Not fast, just in time. Han family young master's figure appeared on the street. Lan Yi and Boundless Mang were slow, but they weren't that much slower than Unchung Matsu. In reality, everyone had arrived at the same time. While Gu Fei was fighting them, Han family young master had already made his preparations. Even though everyone was in a hurry to get into position, it couldn't be compared to Mu Yun Guild who were fleeing like rats. These people had lost their fighting spirit after being casually slashed by Gu Fei. The only thought in their minds was, "I don't want to lose levels." They had almost forgotten that they could still raise their weapons and fight back. Lan Yi and Boundless Mang were good at commanding. They calmly killed the fleeing Mu Yun players one by one. Unchung Matsu yelled and sent messages in the channel, but he couldn't control the situation at all. Gu Fei didn't even bother looking for a target. He just killed whoever he met. When he suddenly appeared in front of a person and raised his sword, he suddenly thought of the problem of his PK points. He quickly looked at it and saw that it was already 29 points. It was almost 30, so he quickly stopped. However, the player in front of him didn't know this. Seeing that Gu Fei's sword was about to fall, he panicked and said, "I won't kill you if I leave the guild? I won't kill you if I leave the guild?" "Yes, I won't kill you if I leave the guild," Gu Fei replied casually. The player quickly took out his guild badge and said, "I leave the guild." The guild badge was something that couldn't be traded or discarded, but it slowly disappeared from the player's palm. Without a doubt, the badge was forcefully erased by the system after the player left the guild. Gu Fei was startled. He had chased after them for so long, but this was the first time someone had truly withdrawn from the guild in front of him. Furthermore, they had even taken out their guild emblem and made it disappear as proof. It was clear that they were sincere. When this person started, everyone had different reactions. Boundless Mang and Lan Yi also shouted, "I won't kill you if you leave the guild," under the instruction of the Han family young master. Some people on Mu Yun Guild's side cursed at this person's behavior, some remained silent, and some even secretly took out their guild badges and held them in their palms. They were having a fierce internal conflict. "I'm leaving too." Finally, in a corner of the battlefield, another person stretched out his hand and let the guild badge in his palm disappear. "I'm leaving. I'm leaving." For a moment, some people who were still hesitant took out their badges to prove that they had left the guild. Cloudmid's moody was filled with sorrow. Those who traveled with him were naturally his trusted brothers, and yet, at this juncture, they had all chosen to withdraw from the guild. Someone immediately sent a message to Unchung Matsu, saying that they were only stalling for time and that they would join the guild in the future if there was a chance. A chance? Unchung Matsu sneered in his heart. What did he mean by a chance? It probably meant that they wouldn't be hunted by Qianli drunk anymore. Then, they would have a chance to join the guild, right? However, Qianli drunk's persistence was as famous as his valiance. Would he let them go so easily? Mu Yun is finished. Unchung Matsu sighed and faced the players who were rushing toward him. Chapter 8:17. Unchung Matsu, who was already in despair, no longer cared about anything else. His explosive strength was no small matter. The players who wanted to kill him were actually repelled by him. However, Lan Yi and Boundless Mang were also experienced and extremely treacherous masters. Seeing that this guy was killing so boldly, they didn't send people to surround him. Instead, they sent some archers to hunt him down. Of course, most of the archers were playboys. There was no need to mention how wretched they were. Unchung Matsu was one of the most famous guild leaders in Cloud City, but in the end, he still ended up like this. What was even more infuriating was that these wretched people looked bored and unwilling when they attacked Unchung Matsu. Unchung Matsu really didn't get any respect even in death. The warrior was kited by a dozen archers. The result was obvious. Unchung Matsu finally fell in pain. Before he died, he hoped that Qianli would give him a quick death. However, Gu Fei was limited by his 29 PK value. He watched expressionlessly as Unchung Matsu was shot down by an arrow filled with wretchedness. Unchung Matsu also had PK value. He instantly lost a level and followed in the footsteps of Black Index Finger on the tragic path of falling below the 40 mark. However, the situation of his guild was even more tragic. The act of leaving a guild was like a contagious disease. Once one person started it, it would immediately spread to the others. Some of them followed Unchung Matsu and were threatened with losing a level. There were also some who didn't even come. They were just tempted when they saw people continuously leaving their guild. These names were not unfamiliar to many people in the guild. Many of them were the elites of Sheep Cloud Guild. Their departure had a huge impact. However, why did they suddenly want to leave the guild? There was no information. While everyone was still confused, they suddenly realized that their guild leader's level had suddenly dropped. Everyone understood that their guild had once again suffered a catastrophic blow. So many elites of the guild couldn't take it anymore and chose to leave. It was time for them to make plans for themselves. Therefore, leaving the guild became a trend in Sheep Cloud Guild. Friends who were close to each other would send a private message, "Are you leaving?" The reply would usually be, "What about you?" Therefore, in a small circle, as long as one person said, "I'm leaving," many people would say, "I'm leaving too." Within half an hour, there were only 741 players left from the original 1,050. 309 players had already chosen to leave the guild, and this wasn't over yet. Many of the players who had gone to the dungeon were still able to receive system notifications from the guild. They saw the wave of players leaving the dungeon, but they didn't know what was going on. The players in the dungeon were also gloomy. Gu Fei and the Han family young master didn't know about the situation yet. However, Unsworn Sword, Against the Current, and the others knew about the situation through their spies. Reflection Time was stunned. He didn't think that their ambush would have such a huge impact after Qianli got drunk. He thought that Unchung Matsu would only jump up and down and shout, "We fell into a trap again." However, according to the report, the channel of Sheep Cloud Guild was completely silent. Unchung Matsu didn't come out to do public relations at this critical moment. He seemed to be tired. Sheep Cloud Guild is finished. Reflection Time concluded. We're not far from it either. Unsworn Sword laughed. Reflection Time led the players back to the revival point. There were so many players with PK points that the chances of picking the wrong quest was much higher than picking the right one. Reflection Time brought over 100 players with him, and each of them took a quest. When they returned, only 13 of them picked the right quest. This method is too inefficient. Unsworn Sword shook his head. Some of his subordinates even picked the right quest. It's not good, but they're all hiding in the revival point. There's no other way, Reflection Time said. We've already lost a lot of strength. I don't think we need to rush. Keep attacking them, and we'll kill them eventually. Unsworn Sword's mind was clear. Reflection Time was a little reluctant to give up on the upper hand, but he had to admit that the chances of killing Singing to Wine were not high. However, if they extended the battlefront and continued the war in the future, would they really be able to get rid of Singing to Wine? It would be difficult for Reigning the Four Seas to do this alone. They needed to gather many friendly guilds and work together. Only then would Singing to Wine have no more room to grow. Reflection Time expressed his opinion, and Unsworn Sword agreed with him. In short, it would be difficult to control the current situation. This was basically repeating the old path that Unchung Matsu and Black Index Finger had taken against them. They turned their initiative into passivity, and in the end, they were dragged down by themselves. Such a vivid example had just happened not long ago, and Unsworn Sword was quite good at learning from it. However, the battle wasn't over so quickly. It was only the battle between the big guilds that had come to an end, but the small and medium guilds that were caught up in this battle weren't so quick to determine the victor. They were still trying their best to kill each other. The guilds that were forced into a corner and had no way to fight back would basically walk on the path of disbandment. The number of guilds in Cloud City decreased rapidly, as if they were going through a great purge. Black Index Finger almost repeated the tragedy of Unchung Matsu. Fortunately, Unchung Matsu was one step faster. Seeing Unchung Matsu in such a state, Black Index Finger hurriedly dispelled the idea. He had already compromised in his heart. Getting drunk with Qianli was a bad decision. Now Muyun was done for. Ing Chi Studio, which had organized this operation, did not fulfill their promise of help. Intercepting and killing in the Black Dragon Mountain range, using teleportation scrolls with ambushes to lure 1,000 Miles drunk into a trap. These beautiful plans did not seem to be able to affect the direction of the battle. Guild Master, what should we do? Many players in the guild heard about the ending of their biggest ally, Muyun Guild, and were all worried. Silently, a few members of the Black Alliance also left the association. The infection of leaving the guild had arrived, but Black Index Finger was not as hopeless as Unchung Matsu. He thought of the only hope for the survival of the guild, getting drunk with Qianli. Admit that he lost, admit that he was wrong. That was all Black Index Finger could think of. It was humiliating, but there was no other way. Black Index Finger would feel even more aggrieved if the guild that he had built up collapsed just like that. Both sides were aggrieved, but at least one of them could give him a chance to be comforted. As for the other one, it would only become more aggrieved after the first one. Black Index Finger expressed his opinion in the guild channel, and the guild was silent. No one expressed their support, and no one expressed their opposition. However, there was an obvious sign that the infection of leaving the guild had suddenly stopped. It was obvious that everyone supported him in their hearts. However, if they voiced their support now, it would make them look very useless. Thus, they would let the president handle the useless things. Everyone just had to enjoy the results of their useless actions. Black Index Finger wants to have a chat with us. After a while, Black Index Finger's intention was finally passed to Gu Fei. Either he admitted his defeat and begged for mercy, or he is making a last-ditch effort to set up a trap. There are only two possibilities, Han Family Young Master said. We will decide the place, and he will come himself. Gu Fei continued. He surrendered. The Han family's young master concluded. But in the current situation, it doesn't matter if he surrenders or not. After all, Sword Demon and the others in the dungeon will be released without a problem. Gu Fei said. He won't think that way. He's afraid that you will continue to cause trouble for them. Han family young master said. The matter has already been resolved. What's the point of continuing? Gu Fei was very magnanimous, but then he added, but in the future, prioritize them for wanted missions. At least look at their sincerity in surrendering. Han family young master said. What do you think? Do you know how much money I spent just to buy the teleportation scroll? Han family young master asked. Gu Fei felt that Black Index Finger would rather die in battle, because he would have to face a strong psychological and monetary blackmail. Therefore, when the Black Index Finger met the two of them, the thought of dying quickly came to his mind. Qianli was drunk and didn't say a word. From the beginning to the end, Han family young master's main meaning was basically one word: pay. There's nothing else to pay. Han family young master seemed to be very wronged. We can only use money to pay. What a tragedy. Roughly, how much money? Black Index Finger braced himself and asked. Even if he used his knees to think, he knew that this was the time to ask for an exorbitant price. He wasn't a rich person, so he could only collect all the money in the end. If he couldn't collect it, then he would close down. Let me see. In this battle, we used more than 200 teleportation scrolls. You know how much a teleportation scroll costs, right? Black Index Finger spat out blood. Gu Fei almost couldn't hold it in. This guy really lied without blinking his eyes. More than 200 teleportation scrolls? He didn't even buy so many, right? Black Index Finger quickly calculated in his mind. Right now, the price of teleportation scrolls could only be higher, not lower. There were more than 200 of them, and it didn't matter if they were real or fake. Even if this was the price that the other party had offered, it would be 300,000 gold coins. Black Index Finger had a total of 1,000 players, and even if he split the cost, he would still have to fork out 300 gold coins per person. He just didn't know if these guys were willing to pay. More importantly, the young master of the Han family still hadn't had enough. Clearly, he wasn't the only one. Very unbelievable. We originally had more than 100 people, but you forced more than half of them to leave. They were all top players in the game. What should we do with such a serious loss of talent? Han family young master asked. This person? Black Index Finger stuttered. Do you think the person or the teleportation scroll is more valuable? Han family young master said. Black Index Finger didn't hesitate. The scroll is more valuable. What about the elite players? Especially the super elites that our guild lost, Han family young master said. Elite my ass. Super my ass. Black Index Finger's face was full of tears. Who didn't know that you guys were just trash that came to make up the numbers during the city war? If you guys were super elites, then I would be the super GM. Black Index Finger, why aren't you saying anything? Han family young master asked. Black Index Finger wiped his sweat. That, super elites, how super are they? I really want to see them. So Han family young master sent a message and drifting flashed into the room. Drifting had played in Black Index Finger's mercenary group before, so Black Index Finger wasn't a stranger to him. He was stunned when he saw him. The Han family young master said, "Look, they are so super, so elite, but they were forced to leave the guild by you. What a huge loss." Black Index Finger was about to collapse. The person in front of him was indeed worthy of the title of super elite, but the problem was that he was obviously a special case. Now that he was standing here, it was obvious that he would be added back soon. How was he going to calculate this? The super elite Drifting greeted Black Index Finger, casually chatted with him, and then sat down as if there was no one else around. "How many super elites left with you?" Han family young master asked Drifting. "About 70, Drifting said. "Then let's count it as 70. Han family young master waved his hand generously. "Well, I have a good way to calculate the value of super elites," Drifting said. "Oh." Han family young master raised his eyebrows. Black Index Finger was suddenly full of expectation. When Drifting was in Black Mercenary Group, he got along with him quite well. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they were old friends. Was this person going to help him now? Drifting began to talk about his idea. "Let's calculate it according to the value of their equipment. There's no standard for other things like techniques, levels, professions, and so on. It's not easy to calculate." "But we can't find the others now," Han family young master said. "Then there's no other way. Let's calculate it according to my equipment. Those guys must have better equipment than me, but we can't find them. So, we can't do anything about it," Drifting suggested. "I see. Then there's no other way. We can only calculate it according to your trash equipment." "Black Master, you're going to make a fortune this time," Han family young master said. Black Index Finger cried. He really cried. "This is collusion, this is a conspiracy." Black Index Finger shouted in his heart countless times. What kind of character was Drifting in the game? These two guys could confidently say that other people's equipment was better than Drifting's. How could they shamelessly say that Drifting's equipment was better than Black Index Finger's? Was there really no justice in this world? While the Black Index Finger was mourning, the two fellows had already started to settle the score. Drifting looked at his equipment, shook his head, and sighed, as if he was looking at a pile of rubbish. In the end, he regretfully announced, "My equipment, if sold on the market, would only be worth about 20,000 gold coins. Alas, I'm too ashamed to see anyone." 20,000 gold coins, 70 people, that's 1,400,000, am I right? The Han family's young master said. "Alas, I'm so useless. My equipment is only 20,000 gold coins," Drifting said. "You are too much." Black Index Finger couldn't bear it anymore. Even so, he didn't dare to raise his voice. He just wanted to point out that there was something wrong with the conversion method of these two guys, something very wrong. "Oh, is there a problem?" Han family young master didn't care. "If there is a problem, we can discuss it later. Let's count the next item." Next item? Black Index Finger stuttered. "Yes, next is the problem of how many people are in jail. In order to avoid being hunted down by you, the remaining 50 or so super elites of my guild had to hide in the dungeon. They sacrificed a lot of time. We all know that time is money. In the game, time isn't just money, it's also levels, equipment, and opportunities. Think about it, if these people weren't in prison and were training normally, they might be lucky enough to pick up a Night Streak sword or something like that. But now, because they're in prison, they've missed out on countless opportunities. This can't be evaluated with money. But since we can't find any other alternative, we can only use money. Black Index Finger, how much do you think these losses are worth?" Han family young master said. "Tell me." Black Index Finger was powerless. "Tell me? I can't tell you. Time is priceless. It's hard to measure it with money, let alone in-game currency." Han family young master said. "Maybe we should use RMB to make up for these losses?" Drifting interrupted. Black Index Finger stood up. He really wanted to strangle Drifting. Luckily, Han family young master immediately added, "That's not a good idea. Let's solve the in-game problems in the game. Guys, you don't have to calculate anymore. Give me a total number. The black index finger was in despair. He couldn't afford the 1 million gold coins he had just spent. He wanted to continue listening because he was curious. He wanted to know what else these shameless fellows could do to make money. As expected, the young master of the Han family would never disappoint anyone. Next, he calculated the fees for Gu Fei's efforts to hunt him down and wash his PK fees, as well as the travel fees for the reborn amethyst girl who was forced to leave because of this incident, as well as the fees for Yun Zhongmu, who had specially come from Moonlit Night City to help him. Oh, he forgot, there was also Lan Yi and the others who had rushed over from the faraway Whitestone City. They were further away, so this favor was even greater, so the fees would be even higher. Furthermore, it was extremely heaven-defying. Now that the city was facing reconstruction, the construction fees and the like had to be paid by the people who had destroyed it. After calculating all these bits and pieces, the young master of the Han family wrote countless zeros on a piece of torn paper, then passed it to the black index finger. I've listed the numbers quite neatly. Black index finger did the calculation and came to a conclusion: 4 million gold coins. That's it, right? Maybe there's more that I missed, but I think we shouldn't be greedy. We should be satisfied with this number. If the guys who came out of prison are unhappy, it's my responsibility. I won't let them cause trouble for you. Good. The black forefinger nodded. His face was deathly pale. With a wave of his hand, he tore that piece of paper in half. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.